Welcome to our Game of the Year discussion. I'm Matt Falvey. This is Matthew Owen.
What's up, guys? Finger guns.
We're going to be talking about best music and our individual Game of the Year lists. We got Chief Walker in the chat. We got Maester. We got Crazy Gamer.
What's up, guys?
Sorry it took a little bit longer, but you know how doing things with computers are.
Yep.
And to be a big problem. So let's start off with best music.
Yeah, we got quite a few nominees here. Did you want to read off some of these noms, or you just want to throw the music out there and then be like, it's this game, surprise?
Well, as people heard from the lead-in, we got Cuphead. We got Super Mario Odyssey. We got Wolfenstein 2. We've got, or Wolfenstein the New Colossus. We've got Life is Strange Before the Storm. Night in the Woods, Die Anywhere Else is the track we're going to play from that.
Yes.
Persona 5, Nier Automata.
Yes.
And Zelda Breath of the Wild. And Sonic Mania.
Ah, good. I'm glad you remember that, because, oh boy, Sonic Mania, we talked about how great the music was, and then I totally forgot that.
So that's a lot of, wow, that's a lot. How are we going to sort all that out?
We did Cuphead first. Do you want to just play the title theme there so people can hear this music at the same time? Maybe if you guys also kind of want to throw in your choices in the chat, that would be fun. I think me and Matt kind of have at least two favorites ourselves that we'll probably fight for. But I think we should just go through the nominees and let people hear the music and we can commentate on it. So let's do that. You heard Cuphead in the very, very beginning before the stream.
That was the track Treetop Trouble.
Yeah, one of the first bosses you do. Maybe the second or third, depending on how you play them. But my favorite track is this one I think you're going to play, Matt, which is the title theme.
That's right. Cuphead opening theme.
It's really great.
They like to roll the dice. By chance they came on a devil's game, and gosh, they paid the price. Paid the price. And now they're fighting for their lives on a mission fraught with dread. And if they proceed but don't succeed, well, the devil will take their heads.
Bomb. And I like the piano as well, but just that's the first thing you hear when you start the game is that great harmony of the two voices, which are pretty much just telling you the story of Cuphead. And immediately it kind of sets the tone for the audio. You also have like this cool little animation of Mugman and Cuphead kind of swaying side by side. But if anything, that intro theme sets the stage for what you should expect the music to be and the tone to be. I think it's really, really great. A lot of Cuphead, though, is just kind of straight jazz.
Yeah, it's I mean, what they could have done is they could have gone for the same music you would see in cartoons of that era. Mm-hmm. Which is a bit more symphonic. Think like, you know, Warner Brothers sort of cartoons and that kind of thing. And maybe a bit more animated, a bit more start and stop, matching the movement of it. But I think that what they did here was probably a lot better than what people were expecting. It still fits from that time period, but it has such a rousing, such a huge energy to it. And also, the composer managed to like evoke enough that it sounds exactly like it's from that era, but I don't think that he relies too much on a lot of tropes and still does a lot of new things and created a pretty stunning body of work.
Well, I want to say too that it's kind of hard to get the full effect without seeing like kind of the bosses as they play. But the soundtrack does a great job evoking the themes of each individual boss as well. So I think you're playing Treetop Trouble, and that's just kind of like in these woods. But when you're fighting a giant flying zeppelin in the sky, or a huge fire-breathing dragon, or you're fighting a haunted ghost on these train tracks, all of the music, even though it is similar genres, it really, really brings out the tone and the atmosphere of each level. And I think that was what was cool too. They could have just done standard combat music if they wanted to, but each boss has a sound or a music track that is just as colorful and vibrant as the images you're seeing as well, which is something I liked quite a bit. I think Cuphead chills. I don't think I'm ready to cut Cuphead for sure. That's the one I'm going to fight for.
Absolutely not. No, Cuphead is it's in the running. All right, let's move on to something from A Night in the Woods. This is called Die Anywhere Else.
It's very chiptune-y. You got to give it about like 20 seconds to kick in. This is good like driving music. Comes. I love this song. That's all you kind of really. It's kind of the same loop, but.
All right. Now that's. I mean, Night at the Woods. The score is a little bit more all over the place, but I will say that when I put it on, I didn't play Night of the Woods until like a couple days ago, just to kind of get a taste of it for the end of the year stuff, and I was immediately hooked by the title theme. I thought it had a good swagger and a good feel to it, and it really matched the writing. It matched that sort of retro but new feeling of going back home to something that's changed.
So the normal like world music is kind of more ambient and atmospheric, but the track you just heard, Die Anywhere Else, is you play as like this college dropout, and when you come back home, you meet up with your old friends, and you guys are like used to be in this band, so you just go to band practice, and you're all sloppy, and then when you play the band portions of the game, it's kind of like this rock band sort of music note highway, and that's one of the first songs you play, and so it's a good distinction between like the chiptune kind of sounds of your band practice, and then when you go out into the fall and the autumn of the world itself, it's very tonally different. Cracking open a cold one for Night in the Woods, a good old Canada Dry.
Yeah.
It's great because you were both dry and Canadian, Matthew.
Very well played. Let's move on to Life is Strange Before the Storm.
It's very artistic and indie. This is the opening theme. It's one of those ones you kind of turn on in the background and just chill out to, read a book to. Very good guitar progression. It's very slow, but it's... Love it. There's like another little guitar part that comes in, I think, right around here. Right here on this measure. Yeah, I love it a lot, dude.
You know what? I had actually, I didn't play this one, but I really like that. It kind of sounds like a, like, you know how sometimes people take pop songs and they play them in a minor key? This sounds like if you took the Last of Us soundtrack and you played it in a major key. Well,
I just want to set the stage for you real quick because Before the Storm, Life is Strange, it's kind of an artistic game. It's kind of indie in a way. So while that track played, something you would see is just, someone's feet hanging off a train while it travels across, these old dilapidated tracks, and there's a squirrel up on the trees that the leaves are changing colors, and it's an overcast day, but the sun is peeking out of the clouds. It's like a very nice breath of fresh air, an outdoorsy kind of soundtrack. And they do have pop tracks in there, but a lot of the soundtrack of Life is Strange Before the Storm is these slow guitars, these evocative kind of sometimes haunting themes that really show the underlying darkness of Life is Strange. But I don't know, it so perfectly captures the essence of like how to be young and free. And at times it is, a little bit, it's another pop song with slow guitar and a girl singing. But when it works, boy, does it work. It's similar to Night in the Woods. And I think Night in the Woods has more memorable upbeat songs, but I think that Before the Storm has way more memorable ambient songs. That's at the tone. But damn, it's good music, dude. You should definitely check it out. It's not that long of a soundtrack either.
I mean, it's one thing just to have music that sounds like it's straight out of a Spotify coffee house playlist, but that was a really powerful track. Do you know if that's a licensed track or was that scored for the game?
No, it's scored for the game. There's like it's mixed. I could be wrong about that. I have never heard it before, but I do know that Life is Strange Before the Storm contains some covers, or maybe not covers, but some original music that is, it's vocal. It's not just made for the game. I think there may be super small indie tracks that I haven't heard of personally, but there is a decent amount of original soundtrack stuff, and that's what you get from those, like the song you just heard. That's the original stuff, the haunting kind of slow guitar progressions. I don't know. It also that's something like I would have written if I was that good, and I think that's why I connect with it, because I used to play a lot of guitar. And Matt, you play guitar, but I go towards more of like the slow acoustic guitar progressions, not normal chord progressions. So it spoke to me. I don't know. It's in a game, or in a year full of really, really good games with very powerful soundtracks. It was funny to me that a 3-piece episodic spin-off series was the one that stuck out.
I'm really glad you brought that one up, because I would not have heard it. And I know that Life is Strange, the first season that I'd played, There were some really nice musical moments in there where we've talked about this before, where they would just let the moment breathe for 4 or 5 minutes. But it just kind of sounded like indie music, and not that that's a bad thing, but it just kind of sounded very generic. That sounded really tailored for the experience. That sounded better than anything I heard on Life is Strange first
And
time.
there's a good mix of ballads, of love songs, lullabies, and stuff. They know how to utilize the different genres without being like too art house, too indie.
Yeah.
But like Matt said, a lot of those sequences, it is laid back. You're just kind of watching the world. You're not really interacting with it, and so it is chill. I left. If you look up Life is Strange Before the Storm title theme, you'll have those. Oh, here's the main title screen for an hour long. I remember when I first started that game, I put down the controller and was just listening to the music while I did other things. And I was fine having that on the background for like 2-3 hours because it's just very haunting in that way. But yeah, what's the next one? Because Life is Strange is good, but
let's do Nier Automata. This is called Wretched
thank you.
Weaponry with dynamic vocals. A lot of the tracks have a lot of different movements to them. It'll be the same song, but done in either a chiptune style or in a smaller style, bigger style, epic. This is one of the larger sounds of it. Wretched Weaponry, Nier Automata.
Excited to hear. I hear the bells in there. I like the drums. Wow. That's good. That is very good. Yeah.
Okay. So
yeah, I haven't heard a lot of that. I haven't played the game yet, and I heard like a few tracks before, but I've never heard that one. Yeah, I can see why people are like, this is really, 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 that's the one. It's good. That is very good. Damn, you're right.
It has I'm a sucker for epic kind of music that uses classical romantic era chord progressions where you have where they're sort of moving, what's it called, in counterpoint. Those sort of like really dramatic small pushes, and it just keeps rising up and falling down. And because this game uses a lot of similar motifs to play on, to be able to use those themes and have them dynamically change on different playthroughs and different areas of a level that you're in, you get a lot of that same kind of progression. So like I'm a big fan of Muse and anything really epic. Yeah. And this really, really, it scratches that itch for me in terms of what I like out of Muse and out of dramatic music, out of like Rachmaninoff, the Romantic era composers. So I love it. And there's a lot of themes on here that sound in that same vein. You've also got the whole the singer and the composer creating a futuristic sounding language where they basically, like Sigur Rós does, where they fused different languages together to create their own.
Okay. Yeah.
And it's just I haven't played more than 2 hours of Nier Automata. I sold it, and then I bought it again because people talk about it so much. I want to actually try it for myself again. But yeah, I love the music. I've spent so many hours listening to the music this year, and every track I heard, I just thought this is one of my best, one of my favorite soundtracks of all time.
I agree with you. I think specifically, having not played and just only judging off the few tracks I've heard and this one, I think there's something very good that Nier does, especially with the dynamic usage, like you said. They're reusing the same themes for different encounters, but very few music soundtracks, and I would say very few epic soundtracks, do a really good job of, for those who aren't musically inclined, bringing it to the ceiling and then having a satisfying drop, if you will. But that's what it did really well, is specifically that track when it pushed to the ceiling and then it pushed through, but it still had the bells in the background. There's a lot of instrumentation going on in there that I can appreciate. And that's one of my favorite things specifically, is little teeny tiny bell progressions hidden throughout. I mean, dude, that's a good track. That's good.
Okay, well, let's move on. Glad you liked it. We have Persona 5.
Yeah, buddy.
Persona is known for fantastic music. This is called Phantom.
Yes. Super jazzy. Yeah, get the funk, dude. Ooh, ooh, ooh. Ooh, tricks. Yes. No, but it's still good.
That's when I queued up.
It's fine. It's all great. Persona 5 is going to win this category, I swear to God.
Persona 4 soundtrack was amazing.
Can you play the one that I...
Yeah.
We'll get around to it. It's fine. I mean, say your piece. But that's I think, this song is the one that really pushes kind of how Persona 5 can be big band, but then jazzy, and then have vocals, and then be like super catchy at the same time. What you're playing is the... if it's Last Surprise, that is the combat music. You see it other times in the game, but it's in the combat quite a bit.
Okay, well, we can listen to this one a little bit more later if this one's going to be one sticking around for you.
Let's hold on to that then, I think.
So, yeah, with Persona, it does have a huge amount of music on it for sure, and a lot of it is pretty good. There are some elements with it that I'm not like. It's awesome. It's definitely one of my favorites of the year.
It can be repetitive.
For me, it's not better than Nier, because Nier moves me in a way, because that's more my personal preference, is that kind of music. But Persona is definitely, it definitely has more great music on it than Nier, just out of sheer numbers.
I think Persona 5 is also drives kind of, like you said, it does drive emotion at points, like similarly to what Nier does. But I think the leg up Persona has, and maybe this is not a leg up but a leg down, I guess, is it drives the gameplay a lot, and it's also fun. There is their darker tracks and stuff, but with the vocals especially, it seems to be joyous. And even though that's a little bit conflicting with the tone of the game itself, I can see why. I guess I like the more catchier stuff to Nier's more epic stuff, but it's all personal taste. This is music, you know?
Yeah.
So, but you're right. Yeah. Persona 5 has a ton of music, but that's also because it's a super, super long game, and not all of it's going to be great, but a good majority of it, especially for someone like me, who I played like 10 hours of Persona 5, maybe 6 hours of it, and I'm still in the tutorial area, but everything I've always seen of that game, with my little brother playing it, my friends playing it through to completion, I've seen a lot of that game. And the one thing that sticks with me, besides the insane, awesome visual style of it, is the music. That's like the one thing I remember from it, which is pretty big considering, as a non-JRPG fan, really, I'm not like a huge fan of JRPGs, to get sucked in to something as small as the soundtrack, which I usually just brush over in JRPGs anyways. That's just me, though.
Well, Crazy Gamer said he likes the Nier music. Rossner said
good.
Nier has awesome music. Meister says the music's good, yet it only lasted one episode with Matt.
Rip.
And he's
Sad
wanting
face.
to know if I'm going to stream it again since I rebought it. I don't know, because it's such a game that requires like a lot of
It's like 40, 50 hours, and you have to replay.
of just kind of messing through. I might not do that one as a stream, because I might just maybe do some of the highlights or something. But and Kobe's here as well. Beef Walkup,
Hey.
Meister, Rossner, Crazy Gamer. All right,
We have
so
like, what, 2 or 3 more entries?
yes, so we've heard Persona, we've heard Night in the Woods, we've heard Life is Strange, Wolfenstein 2, the title theme.
Yeah, you want to skip to about like a minute in there to give it the run up.
Minute in?
Yeah,
Okey
Wolfenstein 2 is a good mix of atmospheric, kind of slower music, and kind of like guitar stuff you'd expect from Doom. And I think this is a great showpiece of both of those. Yeah, it's like you got weird distorted guitar under it. But it's haunting. Look at your cat. Your cat is dancing. Aw. Oh yeah, it keeps going, bro. It's very interesting musically.
I was not expecting so many chords. I think there's like 25 chords on there.
Yeah, that's the thing about Wolfenstein is that as far as catchiness and like memorable, I don't think Wolfenstein 2 stacks, which is hard for me to say because I love this game a lot. That will become apparent as we talk about Game of the Year stuff. But damn if it's not really well produced. And it might be like snobby to be like, well, I play guitar, so I know how rough it can be to write things like that. But like you just said, that's like 25 chord changes. That even though it's like not all of them work, like that's so hard to do. And that's just the title theme. Yeah, I don't know. Wolfenstein 2 is a good time. I like a lot of the music, but I think more so the moments in the game narratively also drive the music to be good. You know how like if you have a really good track, but then if you pair it with a really sad scene in a movie, it does well. That's why all those like fandom videos that are music videos are popular on YouTube. A good music piece can accentuate a good moment in narrative and vice versa. And I think that's what Wolfenstein 2 does. It aids both its narrative and music together, taken apart. But it's good stuff, at least technically. Same way I appreciate Doom, but I like Doom. I think I would say I like Doom's soundtrack more than Wolfenstein 2's.
What's the rest of the soundtrack like? Because I know in the other Wolfenstein games, the last two that came out, the music was all over the place.
Yeah, that's it. It's a mixture of, well, and that's a thing too, especially with Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus. There's a lot of themes. I'll talk about it later more, but you have themes of revolution, you have themes of somberness, downright depressing stuff. I mean, there's some really bottom of the barrel, like really, I mean, not quality wise, but like just, what's the word I'm looking for? There's places that story goes that you don't want to be. It's uncomfortable, and the music can range from like I said, somber, depressing to these big revolution ballads to these driving hard guitar tracks when you're just mowing people down. There's a lot of like tonal stuff too. So you'll be going, well, that's going to get into spoilers. You go a lot of different locations in the game. And so it's not all just like, oh, I'm going through these tunnels or, oh, I'm blowing up a big tanker or a big hangar or something. There's a lot of different themes as well of where the game goes. But there's that Americana to it too. There's a lot of themes. You're right. It's all over the place. Very similar to what last year's Wolfenstein or 2 years ago Wolfenstein's 1 did.
I didn't play this Wolfenstein. I haven't heard any of the soundtrack other than that title theme. But that was pretty neat. I didn't realize it was going to sound so proggy, like gigantic proggy, yes, epic guitar rock.
If Doom was the hardcore metal of id Software kind of games, Wolfenstein 2 is the prog rock. It is the progressive. It is using hard guitar, but in really weird. It's an interesting,
which makes sense because Doom's plot is more. It's like simplistic and a little
shoot
cheesy.
Everything. It's hell. Yeah,
and the music was very, very just riff, drums
too. Yeah.
Whereas this is like goes all over the place. It's a little more cerebral and it's a little more like a concept album in a way. Whereas, because Wolfenstein is playing with a lot more of those concepts. All right, we got one last game in the list that we have not, three that we haven't heard from yet. Let's do Mario Odyssey. This is basically the new theme from Mario Odyssey. This is
the one song I actually like, to be honest. I just wanted to hear this song.
All right, well, here it is.
we go, off the rails. Don't you know it's time to raise our sails? It's freedom like you never knew. Don't need bags or a pass. Say the word, I'll be there in a flash. You could say my hat is off to you. Oh, we can zoom all the way to the moon from this great wide wacky world. Jump with me, grab coins with me, oh yeah. It's time to jump up in the air. Jump up, don't be scared. Jump up and your cares will soar away. And if the dark clouds start to swirl, don't feel enchanted, 'cause I'll be your one-up girl. So let's all jump up super high, high up in the sky.
It's so happy. It's so happy. Whoa.
Roster says when this song came on, he waited around for about 5 minutes. Or he's liking the kitty. Maester doesn't want me to break anything. Now, keep in mind, Matt, you see a lot more of the room than people on the video.
Oh, yeah,
see.
I'm sorry.
So, for Mario, I thought that this track was a big standout. And also, this one here, a little one called Steam Gardens. It's
Yeah, there
got
are a
this
few
really
worlds,
cool
for
sort of
sure.
like 60s TV movie, sort of like spy theme, like a heist kind of theme to it.
I think I know which one you're talking about.
Except for this boring symphonic part.
Yeah, I was going to say. Not what I was thinking. Yeah.
This one's awesome.
It's like a title card theme for like a Dragnet or something. Yeah, I remember this. Yeah, okay.
Now, I'll say that one's a big standout. It doesn't really sound like a Mario theme at all. And Jump Up Superstar is a way of sounding like the spirit of Mario, but actually pushing it forward in a way that they haven't really ever done before.
Yes.
But I would say that overall, I don't think this soundtrack is too strong. There's also the nice, what's it, Banneton, the really like Danny Elfman style Pixar when you're in the very first nighttime Cappy Kingdom.
Yeah.
Now
That's
one
fun too, but
that one's strong
like you
too. But
said,
it's a bit derivative of stuff that Elfman and other people have done.
it doesn't really sound like Mario music, so it's not going to give you like that, oh my god, this is new like this is my newest. I feel like the same way about Zelda, so we'll talk about that. But I think there's good tracks, but overall it's not memorable. And like I said with Wolfenstein 2, good pieces of music, maybe not overall memorable, because it's kind of what they do together in tangent with the gameplay. And even then, like I said, a few worlds I was like, oh, it's catchy, but the one song I really remembered was Jump Up Superstar. I mean, there's like an iTunes release, there's like a Vimeo freaking music video. Nintendo knew what they were doing. They were like, let's sit down and make the most catchiest theme that everyone's going to remember.
It's also a really cool moment when it happens as well, because you're like taking part of this cool music video. But I'm going to put that down in the cut category.
Yeah, you can cut that. You can also cut Wolfenstein 2.
All right. Wolfenstein is cut before we've even heard some of the other ones.
It's fine. I know what's coming up. It's not going to stack up against these.
Okay, so I want to do a track from Sonic Mania.
Yeah. Studiopolis? Stardust Speedway, okay. A lot of jazzy soundtracks this year. It does have a really good Sonic feel to it.
All right, so We could also put on maybe Studiopolis as well, because Studiopolis is pretty nice.
It evokes that Michael Jackson Sonic theme, that whole entire Sonic 3 was it Sonic 3 or was it Sonic 2?
Sonic 3 he had worked on, and then he didn't want his name on any of the tracks because he didn't like how a lot of them sounded. But I mean, Sonic 2 as well had amazing music. And actually, all the Sonics have had amazing music. Sonic CD, Sonic 1, Sonic 2.
It's the flip side of what you just said about Mario, is that Sonic or Mario Odyssey music is good music at times. It doesn't sound like Mario music. This is the opposite of that. Sonic Mania is music that is functional and at times uproariously great. But the one bottom line is that it reminds you of Sonic music. You know, this sounds like it would fit. It has a lot of, I don't have to use the same sound effects or you know, synths or whatever, but they have to. It sounds like it came out of a Genesis at times.
I think they use more. I don't think that they're using the exact Genesis chipset, but I think they're just using stuff that evokes it.
Yeah. It does a good job evoking that. Play some more though, for sure. Sonic Mania is a good time. Wild piano.
All right, so now actually for the first Sonic games, the first Sonic trilogy, and maybe even CD, the guy that they had do the music was he was like one of the biggest Japanese pop writers of the time, and this was probably one of the first times they ever had. He was basically like the Michael Jackson of Japan.
Makes sense.
And a like amazing bass player, and that's why all those early Sonic tracks had this like dancing bass all over the place. Like Chemical Plant Zone 2 is it's from Sonic 2. Is just like an amazing track as well, and there's a remix of that in this one. But I wouldn't want to cut Sonic off this list. I think that it's one of the best ones, but I don't think it's the best.
I think Sonic would rise above a few others. Let's keep it, because I think we could even rank these potentially if we wanted. Or I mean, well, let's pick a winner. But I think that there's enough good music, and it might be hard to rank because some of these soundtracks do way different things than the other ones, and it is subjective. But no, I don't feel okay cutting Sonic, because it's like, you know, I was okay cutting Wolfenstein. I think Sonic is memorable enough that it deserves to stay. So let's see what else we got. What else?
All right. So the last one we haven't heard is Zelda Breath of the Wild, which is a very, very difficult one to display because Zelda.
There's not a lot of music, dude.
There's not a lot of music. Most of it is very ambient music, and
Where's my opponent's song?
I think that fits the theme of the game a lot better, because the game, there's a lot of time spent exploring around. You're not really in a rush to get anywhere, and you are doing a lot of sort of trial and error, a lot of stops and starts, and you're changing your mind all the time. I think that it's supposed to evoke that you are outside in the woods, and that there's just like, when I hear these little brushes of piano, to me it sounds like the wind kind of rustling through the trees, the sounds of nature you might hear.
Well, and I think the soundtrack is meant to kind of inform the player too. Like in your beginning, when you see one of those Guardian things where they shoot the lasers, right? That just decimate you. There's always a small kind of like musical hit that starts coming up. It's like kind of rushing piano, if I remember correctly. And that is more what the music is meant to do in this game: inform you of where you are in the world and kind of aid that. It's not meant to be overwhelming. But hit it, Matt. Let's play some of the Zelda music.
So I decided to play. This is a Hyrule Field theme when you're on a horse at night. Oops. There's frickin' Sonic.
Hey, that sounds a lot like my friend Blue Sonic. That's my buddy Blue Hedgehog, man. That's not Zelda Link.
All right, here's Hyrule Field theme.
Yes. Sounds like me trying to write leads for hip-hop beats in FL Studio. It's very experimental.
It is. It's really all over the place. You know,
Is-
there are a few, like some of the battle themes approach
Yeah.
more of a traditional thing because the battle is like when people expect from traditional Zelda music is something more linear and straight ahead that fills you with that rousingness. I mean, one of the closest things you get to that is the battle theme, but there's also a really nice sort of the
Well, and
main
also
thing.
Zelda. Go ahead.
I was going to say that this theme I wanted to play is this is the track you hear when you first start the game and you emerge from a dark cave from a slumber and you get a look at the world.
You're wearing no shirt, nipples
Shirtless out there. All right, so this is that one.
out. Link doesn't have any nipples. That's what I expect.
That's the theme coming out of the cave. And then we had a request in the chat. Well, not a request, but Rossner said his favorite Breath of the Wild song is Hateno Village, so we'll play a little bit of that.
Yeah, play Hateno. I kind of don't like Zelda music in some places, specifically now that I'm rehearing it. But now that he says that, a lot of the village themes are pretty damn good. I don't.
Okay.
Yeah. God, I want to spit a freestyle verse over this or something. It's good, man.
Please don't. All right, so that was some Breath of the Wild. Do I think that Breath of the Wild? I think that Breath of the Wild is an amazing sound. The soundtrack was available online before the game came out, and I listened to a lot of it, and I thought this sucks. Where's the Majora's Mask epic tracks, the Ocarina of Time epic tracks, Skyward Sword's orchestrated stuff, but I do think that it is so perfect for this game, and that's the point of game music. I don't think this category we're talking about what's the best music you want to listen to on its own. I think it's what music best fits the game. This fits the game really well.
Yes.
But is it better than Persona's Nier?
I don't know. I mean,
for me it's not better than Nier or Persona, but I think I don't know enough about Night in the Woods, Life is Strange, and I don't think it's better than Cuphead. Like, for me, I'm thinking the top ones are Nier, Persona, Cuphead.
Keep going, and this list is... You're correct, by the way, so far. Continue. Just based off of a guess.
And then it's going to come down to... See, that's the thing, is I don't know a lot about...
Just go.
I don't know, okay, then I would put Zelda.
You're wrong already. It goes Before the Storm, then Night in the Woods, then Zelda, because Zelda's cut from the list. It's cut from the list. It's not even on this list. I'm just saying that I played a lot of Breath of the Wild, and listening to Nier Automata or whatever, that was better than the music. And for a game that I haven't played, and then when you add the added layer of how the gameplay reflects on it, I'm sure it's even better than it sounded to me for the first time through. I think that Persona 5 is fantastic, and I think that it should be winning this round, but I can concede Nier because when you started the music, I smiled and I was like, this is real good, Matt. This is real good. So I feel strongly about Persona 5, but if I trust your judgment, man, Nier is good. I'm okay with the Nier winning in the
Okay, so at the top we've got Persona and Nier. Yes. And then I thought Cuphead would be below them.
Yes. I agree with that.
Okay, and then you said what did you say? Life is Strange?
Yeah, if it's between Life is Strange, A Night in the Woods, and Zelda at that point, right?
And then Sonic is way down below.
Oh, no. Then it would go Cuphead, Sonic, Before the Storm, Night in the Woods, Or you could even switch those, Night in the Woods and Zelda, or Before the Storm. Zelda's at the bottom. All I know is that Zelda's at the bottom, in my opinion.
At the bottom?
Yeah.
Do you think it's at the bottom just because it's so sparse? Because there's not much there?
I mean, I'd say that too, yeah. And if you were to put on that music, well, you did put on that music, and a lot of it, like it says, it sounds like me just screwing around in FL Studio, which it does inform the gameplay.
Yeah.
But as a musical piece, even that doesn't stand on its own. If I put that on in the car, no one would be like, let's go. They'd be like, what did you do?
But that's what I'm saying, is that it's not about putting songs on to impress people. It's about how does the music work in the game.
I agree with that, but I think that both things stand on their own. I mean, if you want to put Zelda up at like number 3, I could care less. But I'm just
Zelda's not ahead of Persona, Nier, Cuphead,
or Sonic.
Sonic, no.
But I can agree that most the end 3, like Night in the Woods, Before the Storm, and Zelda, are similar in that all the songs aren't great, but the gameplay informs it, or at least the narrative does. So all 3 of those I could care about in order. My main thing is that I think that music both should stand on its own and should inform the gameplay, and Zelda does one of those, and at times both of those. So that's why it's not at the top of the list. But that's also why, like Persona is and stuff like that. It's not a knock against the game. It's just that it doesn't do as good of a job with his music. We knocked off Mario, and I think that Mario has better songs than Zelda. So semantics, but Zelda is it's good. It's a good direction. I like to see them do less things that are like, let's just do a Epona song for the 4th time over, even though I like that, Like I like the direction they're going. I just don't think that this one hit it per se.
Well, we have 10 options here, so we could actually rank these.
Yeah. Okay, if we have 10, then let's treat it a little bit more seriously.
So Persona, Nier, and Cuphead are in our top 3.
Yes, I'm fine with Nier winning or Persona winning. Either way is fine. They're both fantastic.
Okay.
From there, I would say Sonic.
Sonic over Zelda?
Yeah.
I would like a Sonic Zelda.
Would you like Sonic Zelda?
But I don't know enough about Before the Storm or
Before
Night
the Storm.
in the Woods.
Before the Storm can be. I would say Night in the Woods is better than Before the Storm.
Okay. Mario, I think, is probably is Mario better than Wolfenstein? I'll leave that up to you. You've played more than Wolfenstein than me.
I think Wolfenstein has a better overall sound.
Would you put Mario dead last out of these?
No, I would put Zelda dead last. I think Mario is at least better than Sonic.
Really?
No.
They're basically all of those Sonic tracks are about that same quality.
And to Sonic, the first level is different, and then the second level they remix the track, so there's a lot more like Nier. There's dynamic sound.
Yeah, and they also use a lot of remade tracks. Like I said, there's the Chemical Plant Zone. There's a lot of tracks from the older game in there, which is, I think, a bit of a knock against it. But that's what they're going for anyway, so that makes sense. I mean, what else can you do? If you're gonna remake a level from the older game, you have to have the music.
What's our list right now with all 10?
Persona and Nier at the top. Cuphead, Sonic, Zelda, Night in the Woods, Before the Storm, Wolfenstein, Mario Odyssey.
You can put Mario above Before the Storm. I think
Mario
that's fair.
Above Before the Storm.
Well, that's the thing, man. It's like Jump Up Superstar is a great track, and it's so happy and it's so bright, and Before the Storm is depressing and artsy, but it does have it's hard to choose, man.
I thought that track you showed me from Before the Storm is better than any of the Mario tracks I heard.
Then put it above Mario, because I just don't want to be in the unpopular opinion when it comes to Mario.
Well, we're not saying Mario was the worst soundtrack of the year. We're just saying it's 10. It's the 10th best out of the ones we want to consider.
I think it was more memorable than Wolfenstein's, though.
Okay.
As far as that's the thing that I bought up against is I think Wolfenstein does the same thing. I would put Wolfenstein and Zelda closer on this list, but both low, because I think they do the same thing. Like Wolfenstein, some tracks are great, but some of them just sound like crap when you don't have anything to show. They more are there to be gameplay aids than to be good pieces of music. And I agree. That's like the same sentiment I have about Zelda. So I think Wolfenstein's fine below the list. But if you want to, push Zelda up, I think it does enough things. Like I said, with Hitano Village and other villages and some of the I don't want to call them temples, but some of those themes are decent. At least the wind one I remember being all right. So yeah, I mean, I'm okay with that.
There's also just 9 on this list. Corey noticed it. He's good at noticing these things. He's basically our producer, even though he just said he would be a terrible producer. Do you want to? Is there one you want to add onto there?
Rock Band 4. I don't fucking know. Oh, geez, there was so much good music this year, and I can't think of a single one. Is there anything that you want to add?
I liked Tooth and Tails. The Russian folk music was pretty cool. I liked
Flint Hook.
Flint Hook?
Look up the title. Can you pull up YouTube and look up the title theme for Flint Hook?
Yes.
Because Flint Hook is a roguelike kind of... If you just look at a screenshot of Flint Hook, you'll know what it is. But it's got the title theme? Yeah, whatever the opening theme is, it should be there. I can look it up too and find it.
Flint Hook intro, Flint Hook OST, Flint Hook opening.
Do intro or do opening. Do opening for sure. Because it's like the title theme when the title card hits.
There you go, Flint Hook intro.
Yeah, let me hear it for a second. I'll let you know. Yeah. When this hits, it's stride. Wait. It's so good. It's a lot of that.
That's a good theme, but does the rest of the soundtrack hold up?
Yeah, it does. Well, it's a roguelike, so I guess it's like, I don't know. That was just me fishing. The first thing that came to mind when I thought of a good song in the year 2017 was Flint Hook, for the 10th spot. But if you have something else, I'm willing. I'm open to suggestions. I'm not like dead on the stake for Flint Hook or anything. I'm just trying to think. I have my whole list of games that I played this year.
Yeah, that's a pretty strong.
What Remains of Edith Finch? Did they have good music?
It just kind of had like fitting score music.
It was like What Life is Strange did, but less memorable, I think. Yeah, you know what? I think top 9 is okay. I'm looking. My problem is that I played a lot. Like Destiny 2 also has really good music, but it's more atmospheric. I'm looking, dude, and this is where everyone's
we can.
Why are you bad?
Did you like Horizon Zero Dawn music?
I don't remember it, to be honest. Okay. Like that's my issue. I would say Ukulele had good music.
Right, that was Grant Kirkhope?
Yeah, I believe so. But even then, like I think Flint Hook's music was better.
All right, I'm fine with Flint Hook being where do you want it? At the end?
10. Just put it at 10. It's fine.
Okay, Flint Hook.
Yeah. So what's our full list?
All right, we've got Persona and Nier up at the top.
We have to choose a winner. You want to do Nier? I could do Persona too.
Well,
they both have tons. Wait, someone say something.
Oh no, Rossner was gonna nominate Xenoblade Chronicles 2.
I haven't played it. I couldn't speak on it.
Yeah, I don't know.
I've heard good things. I've watched people stream it and I've been like, oh, that's nice. But that's similar to Persona. Like there's so much. Nier and Persona both have a ton of music, and I think Persona has more, and because of that, could be seen. I don't know, dude.
Okay, here's the thing. Nier has less music than Persona, but I'm more personally and emotionally affected by Nier's music.
Yeah.
Where to me, it's one of my favorite soundtracks in years and probably will be for a while. I do have more of a personal connection with it, but I think that there's also parts in Persona's soundtrack that I just find irritating and cheesy. A lot of the tracks are standout and are really great, but there's a couple that bring me out of it. A lot of times when the vocals come in, I don't like that at all. I mean, I can agree. I think it would be better if they were all instrumental.
There's
honest.
a lot of instrumental versions as well, and I think that's like a thing too. Is there's like doubled down on a lot of tracks. Yeah, let Nier win it. Let's put Nier at number 1.
Let's do it.
Congratulations, Nier.
Nier is
Thanks for playing Persona.
the Matt and Matt, a 90s kids best music
of 2017.
2017.
With a strong showing from Persona 5 and Cuphead. All of these.
Third
really good.
place, Cuphead. I would actually put Cuphead above Persona.
Would you? I would too.
Really? I mean, if you were just, would you put Cuphead over Nier?
The thing, this is where it comes down to personal preference, because I like Cuphead a lot and I haven't heard a lot of Nier, so personally, yes. But the thing about Persona 5, the thing that stood out to me was the fact that I don't usually draw into JRPGs, and the thing about Persona 5 that made me want to play it was seeing the intro and hearing the music and seeing the style of it. So for a genre I usually don't become attracted to, being able to pull me in with something like music, which I do pay attention to, but JRPGs have very epic themes. They usually have similar themes, big band, orchestral kind of stuff. And I think that Persona 5 having a jazzy, like you said, very vocal soundtrack was an interesting pick. And I think it stood out to me. But
I mean, they've done that, and all the Persona soundtracks have been like that.
True. That's the same thing as I for a long time, I was like, I don't get why people like Persona. You know, one of the co-hosts on my podcast, Super Gamecast, was playing through Persona 4 Golden, and I was like, I don't see it. But when I saw Persona 5, I was like, this is why people like these games, and the music informed that a lot. But you know what? I mean, I played a lot of Cuphead, too. I played Cuphead last night, and by play, I meant hit A so it could launch and I could hear the title theme again. Like, it's a good thing. I
think Cuphead is stronger than Persona. I think nearly every track I've heard on
Cuphead Persona.
What's that?
I'd be okay with Nier Cuphead Persona.
Me too.
Okay.
And
because I think the bottom of the list is fine.
And I think Cuphead is super close to Nier. They are incredibly different, but I think, and they both went such a special distance to try to do something different. Even though Cuphead ends up trapped a bit by its genre that it's going after.
Yeah. Can't really stretch out in that genre.
Yeah, Nier was allowed to basically make sci-fi music, but definitely went a lot farther than your typical sort of JRPG score. I think it sounds nothing like most JRPG scores at all.
I agree.
Completely different. All right, that's it. Nier, Cuphead, Wolfenstein, Sonic, Zelda.
Whoa, Wolfenstein got way up on that list?
Oh, how did that happen?
Yeah, that does that. I mean,
I typed in Wolfenstein instead of Persona.
Yeah, I love Wolfenstein to death, and I would love to see it at the top of every list, but I know it's not number 4. It should be like number 8.
Nier, Cuphead, Persona 5, Sonic, Zelda. That's the first time Sonic's ever going to be ahead of a Zelda in its life. Night in the Woods, Before the Storm, Wolfenstein, Mario Odyssey.
That's good.
And Flint Hook.
Yeah, that's a good list. I'm okay with that list.
There you go. I mean, and also the ordering of it is, some of them are so close, and it's so apples and oranges and some kind of funky fruit from the 30s. So, and another one from space and future. So, if you haven't listened to any of those, give them a listen.
Give them a nice little listen.
Or play the games. Let's move on to our games of the year. So I'm thinking we'll just maybe alternate and just do our top 10. You can do more if you like, but we can stick with 10.
Yeah, I'm bringing up my list now. Sorry.
Hey, Felix Evander. All right, so I'm going to start with my 10. I barely played any games this year because I got into streaming, so I ended up playing a bunch of JRPGs from a long time ago. Not many games that came out this year. Matt, on the other hand, how many games did you play this year?
I count DLCs and I count episodic. So like Before the Storm, which is a 3-piece episodic title, I will count those 3 games because they're like 3 hours a piece. But that being said, 102 games beaten, seen credits on. That's not how many games I played. If I had to say how many games
episodes and DLC.
Yeah, so like, well, that's a thing. Yeah, and that's why it's weird, is because I use my list of things that I've beaten to remind myself for things like this. So I beat all of Hot Wheels DLC in Forza Horizon 3, and that's like 15 hours of content. So who's to say that that's not a, my
Sure,
basic
yeah,
way
yeah,
of judging it is if it's more than 2 hours long, it counts as its own thing.
Okay.
The episodic thing is more or less for me to just parse out where I am in different seasons. So I guess if you want to remove those, maybe closer to like 70. But I beat Mega Man 1 through 6. Like that's something I
Wow.
did in January. Like I play a lot of games. But so it's the flip side. Matt plays a few games very, very feverishly and hardcore with all you guys, and I'm all across the board playing. Even in my last 20 games beaten, like there's Final Fight 3, Super Mario World, Super Mario Brothers 3. Like I beat weird games every year, so a lot of stuff.
Wow. But and a lot of
Wow.
them, I mean, the majority of them are also from this year, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah,
And you can
probably
find a
50%.
lot of those reviews, basically all of them, on a 90skid.com. So what I did was I have 5 games that I think were my top games of this year that really impressed me and are going to stick with me. And then I have 5 other ones that are basically, I'm just going to call them honorable mentions. They're games that came out this year. They're not ones that I think are essential, but they're games that I could recommend and were really special to me. So, and I have some other ones that didn't make the list, like For Honor I thought was a good idea, but
Really,
and pretty good execution, but wasn't for me.
For Honor actually won. We did Super Gamecast 64, which is the podcast I'm on. I do it's audio only. We are putting out our best.
She can't do this.
Yeah, I can't dance to the music. You can hear it, I guess, kind of. But we did a most disappointing game, and For Honor actually came out with it, which was surprising.
Most disappointing over Mass Effect?
No, I think it was Mass Effect. The one before Honor was a runner-up. For Honor was going to get cut super early, but I think that Ubisoft promised a lot with For Honor, and a lot of it was super underwhelming. So it's just, I just want to talk about For Honor for a second. That's all.
Oh, I thought it was pretty solid, and I thought it had like a really unique idea, but
That's what I think. I agree with that. I just think the execution is where they fell flat. And they tried to cross over a lot of like online world stuff with like choose your crew, and then had Splatoon 2 issues of like, well, this faction has way more people on it. And then the whole thing of like, hey, you can fight with different styles. When you get online, it's no, you get a pole arm and you push people off the map. Like that's what For Honor is. I reviewed it for the website, and I believe I gave it a 7 for the campaign. It's like a fun campaign to play through co-op, but then when you get into the grit, the online stuff, which is what they're updating, doing the seasons of, a lot of it's just like super cheap, and it's like a very deep learning curve. And honestly, if you're going to play something like that, like play Absolver, which is a fighting game that's similar to For Honor.
I liked it over Absolver.
Okay. Well, I think in terms of depth, but that's just me.
I think one-on-one is the way to go for Honor. And
that's where I got all the pole arming, man.
And and also, if you look at Rainbow Six Siege, a game that came out from Ubisoft, a multiplayer game that was really rough around the edges when it came out, horrible server problems, people were getting it was just like anyone you played with on that, everybody expected the server to be horrible, but they have continued to work on that game. The server problems are mostly gone. They keep adding content. Rainbow Six Siege is still an amazing game. It just gets better every year. So I wouldn't be... And for the way you can see For Honor, the way they add the different characters and the different classes, I could see that in a year or two it being a lot better than it is now.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't think they've turned around on it like they have with Rainbow Six. Like Rainbow Six was one of those things I was like, what is this? And now we're 2 years deep and they're still updating it. But yeah, For Honor was a fun time. I just wanted to get my 2 cents in there. Sorry, continue. These are your... honorables or whatever.
Yeah, but I'm not sure if they're going to be. How about this?
Top 5, right?
I have my top 5. I have my honorable mentions. I'm going to name a couple. If they are on your list, say so, and then we can talk about it when it comes out. Observer, is that on your list?
Nope.
Yeah, Observer I thought was a really cool idea. It copies a lot of Blade Runner, but when it goes into the dream mechanics where you jack into people's minds, I thought that was really, really interesting. I thought that the controls are pretty clunky. I thought Rutger Hauer sounded awful.
Just so people know, because I think Observer is one of those ones that flew under people's radar. There is a review. I reviewed it, and I gave it a high mark. You can read that on 90skid.com. But what Observer is, it's like this dystopian future where everything is super, super digitized and
Blade Runner. It's Blade Runner.
Yeah. And you're a cop, and you're trying to go look for your son, and through circumstance you get locked down in this apartment building. Yeah. So, but one of the things you can do is you can like pull out this aux cord and pretty much jack into people's brains, and then you go into this super overwhelming. It's like sci-fi horror meets an epilepsy warning on crack. Yeah. All while it tries to tell this mystery murder story, and I think it's very cool visually. But like Matt said, I was like, it's overwhelming. And you were like, oh, like, you too hard. Or I'm like, no, it's just the game at times doesn't want you to play it because there's only so many straight minutes you can take of a baby screaming in your ear before you're like, oh, and suspend this game. And I think that's some knocks against Observer because for as crazy as it makes you feel and as claustrophobic, I mean, literally there is a part where there's a baby screaming for like 5 minutes straight. And I'm like, this is not fun. This is terrible, actually.
Yeah, I think so. A lot of the executions sort of fell flat, and like some of the writing and the voice acting I thought was pretty weak. Some of the like movement mechanics I felt like just it was
Sluggish.
a bit sloppy done. Like it almost would have been better as in like a, what do you call them, a visual novel.
Yep. Yeah, I can see that. And a lot of that game is just going up to these apartment doors and knocking and then getting a little video feed of the person.
And it's
inside.
not even a video feed. It's more like sometimes just one frame, like 3 frames of animation. It's like an old school GIF is played.
FMV or like a GIF. Yeah.
Through sort of like the key where you would look into the keyhole. Not the keyhole. What do you call that thing?
Yeah, like
peephole.
the peephole. Yeah.
But it's really jarring where I think, did you guys just underanimate this, or is this some sort of, that's the like Blade Runner style of old technology brought into the modern way?
I think that's what it is. Yeah, because you jack into people's brains with auxiliary cords, and it's like trying to go for this like weird glitch thing in the walls. There's like kind of matrix coding falling over it, and that's breaking up. I mean,
there are a lot of cool ideas. I just thought it was executed a bit poorly. I'm excited to see what they do next. And I'll probably go back to it because I liked the intensity of it. Like I liked that sort of psychedelic mind trip. And I thought it really took off once you started jacking into people's brains. But it is really tough to have Rutger Hauer narrating most of it because it's like, does he not speak a lot of English too much anymore? Because it sounds, a lot of times he'll go to say something and it's like he runs out of gas. He runs out of breath. And he kind of talks like this.
Yeah. It sounds like someone slowly like pulling out the knife that they just stabbed him with as he records each line. I think you made that joke. It's like him and the janitor, right?
Oh my
they all
God.
sound like they're in pain constantly. Well, and that's the thing too, is that Observer, unlike a game like Edith Finch or any other walking sim that came out, it's a lot of dialogue.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of gameplay there. And any of the gameplay is really like run away from the scary thing. You can't hit it or do anything. And so a lot of the game is held up by it fails because of the voice delivery, which is kind of like bleh. You kind of push through it because it's an interesting world that you want to continue to search through.
Okay.
It's a good time.
All right, let's see here. So,
I mean, I can run through my bottom 5 pretty quickly.
Okay, here, you talk for a bit. Let's hear your bottom 5.
Yeah. So a lot of these games, some of them might be, a little weird or ones you haven't heard of. And specifically, number 10 for me is Thimbleweed Park. You can look up my review of that on a90skid.com.
Right.
Thimbleweed Park is made by Gary Winnick, and I feel so bad for not remembering the other two. So when I was a kid, I played a game called Maniac Mansion. If you're old like me, you'll remember it. Games like Day of the Tentacle. They're point-and-click adventure games on PC. They had a very specific pixel art kind of art style. It was in the Scum engine. That's what it's called. It's weird that I know all this. Long story short, as point-and-click adventure games, the adventure genre has continued. We get things like Telltale games and, these Life is Strange kind of things. It's been a while since we've had a old-school point-and-click game, and to that, it's been a long time since we've had all those old great developers try to do something. So when this game was pitched, they said, we want Thimbleweed Park to feel like it was a game from that time frame. When I was a kid, that you just forgot you had. You pop it in, and it feels like you're going right back to 89 or 83 or whenever the hell these games came out. 86 maybe. My brain is fried. But not only is it interesting, it's a great mystery. It's funny as all hell. It's really fully realized in its visual style. If you see where they came from when they first showed the project to where they ended up, and even where they are now, it's visually, it looks great. And it avoids all the failings of old puzzle games. There's a great hint system. Even the puzzle solutions that might seem outlandish, you can get to and figure out easily due to the hint system. You play as multiple characters, all that have their own personality. It's just a really great game with great characters, a fun story. And for me, someone who grew up, I have tattoos of old school point-click adventure games. It was the first time since my childhood that I was like, wow, this feels, it reminds me of that. And so I had to give it props for that. So Thimbleweed Park, it's on Xbox, PlayStation, PC, and I believe Switch at this point. Maybe not. But if you're into point-and-click adventure games, that one. Did you want to talk about anything, Matt, before I go to my number 9?
I'm going to say... No, you do one more.
Yeah, because Thimbleweed, I don't think you played too much. But that's the main thing, is that Thimbleweed was made by the people who made the greats of my childhood. It's essentially like getting the guys who made original Doom to go just remake the whole team and make a Doom today. I know that sounds weird because we have Dooms that came out this year, but that's like a different team. You know, they're new kids, not the old people who made it back in the day. My number 9 is Resident Evil 7.
Hey, all right.
Which is good because that game came out in January, and I remembered it immediately. I was like, this game's going to be on my list somewhere. I played through that game on stream, not here. I used to work with some other guys, Space Brain Gaming, if you want to look. But I sat down and I played that game through straight, which is a lot to ask for a horror game because that game is scary as all hell. If you played the first hour, 7 or 8 hours. We started at like midnight, and I think we finished up at 7 or 8 a.m.
Wow.
Like I played through, and that was the thing too. At a certain point, you get towards the end of that game, and it kind of, depending on your taste, can either kind of fall flat or get way better. But it got actiony towards the end. I think, if anything, Resident Evil 7 needs a big old round of applause because 5 was cool. 6 was utter trash, in my opinion. I played through that whole game co-op, thought it was utter trash. And then to try and think that Capcom was going to make a good Resident Evil game in 2017, didn't think it was going to happen. And then they were like, it's first person. And for me, I love games like Outlast. And that was like, oh man, this is going to be my bag. And I thought maybe it would be okay, and it turned out to be fantastic. It's scary. It's truly scary. It doesn't just rely on jump scares. It has a wide genre shift between, like, backwoods, crazy cannibalistic family to military experiment to, like, big... There's a lot of places that game goes. And to that point, it's also completely playable in PSVR, and there's free content and paid content DLC-wise that also supports VR. So I think that Resident Evil 7 has won many VR of the Year awards as is. So just that plus the normal experience, dude, it's probably the best horror game as well. I think on my podcast, it also won best horror game. It's a great time. Did you play a lot of it or any of it, Matt?
I played a bit of it. The opening section, I think it was like that demo or that beta, not the beta. It was sort of like that opening like, VCR tape thing.
Yes,
I was just really happy to see Resident Evil get back to its roots, try to be scary again, and also try something brand new. They didn't just go back and do like, hey, we're going to make it look like it was on the PlayStation 1 or the PS2. Yeah. They're not directly copying Resident Evil 1, 2, or 4, which were their most successful ones. They went first person. You know, that maybe this could be the Silent Hill. And I mean, first person works for horror. When Resident Evil 1 came out, it was so revolutionary that you saw dozens and dozens of clones of that genre come out on the PlayStation and basically showed people this is a new way you can play a video game and these are new things we can now do. And Resident Evil 4 basically perfected it started a trend of that camera perspective, that action perspective, and the way that people shoot. Mm-hmm. So they were big trendsetters. And then to see Resident Evil 5 and 6 go so far away from what Resident Evil was. Yeah, total action crap.
More action games than horror.
I just totally missed the point of it. And then to see 7 come back, but in a new way, it was a beautiful thing.
Yeah, really great stuff. My number 8 is Skyrim VR. I mean, it's Skyrim, but in VR. And if that doesn't sell it to you, I don't. You know, it's a little bit blurry on the original PlayStation 4. But when it comes down to VR games that I played on PSVR this year, Skyrim stood out for me because for many other people too, I was like, I've played Skyrim for hundreds of hours. I'm going to play this and see if I enjoy it and just kind of mess around in the world of Skyrim in VR. And then now I'm like 50 hours deep on a new playthrough and doing the Skyrim VR is the coolest way to experience Skyrim, in my opinion. If someone who likes high-res graphics and mods and stuff, obviously the PC version is going to be the way to go. But I was in Skyrim. I was hitting those guys with my maces and shooting. It's great, dude. And there's the scope it brings on when you're fighting giants or giant frostbite spiders. It's really cool. So that's why it just earned my list for the cool factor. And we did, I I believe we did a video review that's on the channel. Maybe not. I don't know. I think we did. Right?
Yeah, we did, absolutely. And we
I'm
also
trying to
had,
remember
and you have some footage of yourself playing that as well, with some pretty neat things happening.
On my channel specifically. Matt, maybe you can talk about this one too. I'm not sure. But my number 7 was Destiny 2. The reason it's not higher on this list is because some of that late game content sucks, and some of the stuff around Destiny 2 was not that great this year as far as locking players out of content and being facetious towards experience gains and stuff. So I'm not going to reward a developer who tries to intentionally deceive its player for their own monetary gain. That being said, it was a 50-hour long first-person shooter that I played online with my friends and had a damn good time. I think Destiny 2 gets a lot of knocks because people expect it to be this never-ending game that you play constantly, like World of Warcraft, and that's not what Destiny is. Destiny is a game you play for 40 to 50 hours. If you really like to get all the guns, maybe 70 to 100, and then you play online, and if you don't play online, then you just come back to it every now and again. And I think it would be very dismissive to say that Destiny 2 wasn't successful because it was, like I said, a 50-hour first-person shooter. I played some of it single player. I played a lot of it co-op. I spent 15-plus hours on that raid with my friends, and yeah, a lot of it was terrible and not that fun, but it was still a fun experience. So that's why it's not higher on my list. But Destiny 2 is a good time. It's a good time. It refines a lot of the issues the first game had as well.
Yeah, I noticed in the beta that I'd played that they made a huge change that was really big for me, because I like to play in shooter games up really close and personal. When I first played Destiny 1, I tried to play as a hunter character, but I noticed that you were always punished for being up close. Destiny was really more about everybody find a hiding spot and just kind of poke out, shoot its boss, hide when he shoots something big at you. But what they really did for Destiny 2 was that they allowed you to actually, especially with the hunter, get in there, stab, dodge out, teleport, you can dodge. So that to me made it a game already a lot better. I didn't have the time to really invest into it, because I know Destiny 2, once you get into it, it's a game with Destiny 1, I got really crazy into it for a bit, and then you kind of back off, and you want to play with some friends and keep it going. So I just didn't have time in my schedule for it.
Destiny 2, what it did is it mainlined a lot of the problems with Destiny 1, or a lot of the things that push people off. You know, you don't have to really grind for currencies. Weapons don't have, some of them, most of them don't have attributes that you can re-roll. Where in Destiny 1, you would have a really good assault rifle, but, I want the assault rifle that gives me health back or gives me extra headshot damage. In Destiny 2, no, it's just the gun is what the gun is, so there's less grinding, there's less repeating the stuff, but the same pitfalls that Destiny 1 had, Destiny 2 does. People expect to play it for super long time, they run through all the content, and then it's dry, and they go, why is there more content? And it's weird because Destiny 2 is that unique experience where it's just between massively multiplayer online and just a normal co-op shooter with you play with your friends. But Destiny 2 is my number 7. Number 6.
Yep.
The final, not number top 5. Number 6, Injustice 2. My guys.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, I was between that and Tekken 7 because Tekken, I gave very high marks to when I reviewed it. I also gave a 9.5, I believe, to Injustice 2. Both Tekken 7 and Injustice 2 were fantastic fighting games. I just think Injustice did more things new. Tekken is Tekken. If you like Tekken, it's Tekken. You're going to have a great time, and it's welcoming to newcomers. Great story mode, tons of content. Injustice 2, not only does it have a fun story mode, it had really cool online. I like the Mortal Kombat-esque fighting more, so that's why I prefer it over things like Street Fighter. But to that point, too, Injustice 2, it had its online fighting, but then it also took its online options and kind of made it this ever-evolving world. So when you fight in Injustice 2, you get, new gear pieces. And that gear is not just cosmetic, because they have this whole world of ever-evolving challenges and kind of fight towers that are thematic, and those are leveled. So you'll go in with a level 5 Superman, and there's a level 10 challenge. And maybe when you're playing a match or whatever, you'll unlock a new cape for Superman that gives him a new fight move or something. That's stuff we haven't seen since N64 Fighters Destiny or some of these WWE games. But the idea that you're taking a 2D fighter and you're adding moves and upgrading their stats as you go, it's really good. Injustice 1 was a fun story mode and a fun online. Destiny 2, I'm saying it again, Injustice 2 is a ton of content for both single player fighter fans, multiplayer fighter fans. There's guilds, there's clans, there's so many modes, so many costume options. There's just so much content in this game, and it's all fantastic. If you like Mortal Kombat, or if you like DC heroes in general, or fighter games, you should get Injustice 2. It's the best one of 2017, bar none. That's what I have to say about that.
Okay, so I've been trying to think of what's going to be my number 10 in terms of honorable mentions, and I was just waiting to see if you were going to say any that I had also on my list.
I think anything that you have on your list is probably going to be, except for like the one that you know that I liked a lot that you didn't like as much, that will be on my top 5. But I think our top 5s are pretty similar.
Oh, really? Interesting. All right, I'm going to go with in terms of my. So this is.
Or you're just going to read off my top 5 probably right here. Now that I think about it, we'll see. Go for it.
I think I'm going to put. Right now it's between a narrative game that not many people played. and it's between I'm going to put Horizon Zero Dawn as my number 10, which is my bottom half, which is sort of an honorable mention. I didn't get to play a lot of Horizon Zero Dawn. When I first played it, I was not a big fan. I felt like it was so Ubisoft open world. It was a beautiful looking game with pretty fun combat, and then it had a lot of little things that held it back. It was I just felt like it basically did everything I didn't like about open worlds, and the opposite of everything Breath of the Wild did that I really loved. Where I felt like Breath of the Wild fixed what open world games are doing, and that's a personal preference thing. Like I just don't like Assassin's Creed type games, and basically Ubisoft type games. But Horizon Zero Dawn has an incredible, is like a very great vision and a great world that I love exploring in terms of the idea of it. I like the idea more than necessarily exploring it. And the story is, for the most part, pretty well told. And then there's just like a few. It's a funny game. It's a really two-sided game to me. Like, so much of it looks really beautiful, and then you'll get some NPC up in your face that they didn't want to spend a lot of time on, and they animate their mouth so off-putting, yet they're like, here's a close-up of their face. So I find it really distracting. The game looks like marionettes a lot of the time because they're so obsessed with these close-ups, and they really should just maybe frame them a little differently. Where like Aloy looks good, but then the old lady wizard who finds you in that cave is I find that she looked kind of crap. And then you've got some other things where like the world looks so beautiful, but you struggle climbing over things because the game didn't want you to. The game designer didn't think of it. They basically used the same rules that Uncharted use for here are the places you're allowed to climb, but that works really a lot better in a linear game. Whereas I find with Horizon Zero Dawn, if you want to be an open world game, I'm constantly having my immersion broken when I walk over to these places and I go like, oh, I can't climb that because they didn't think of that. So there are, but to be fair, I only played like maybe 4 or 5 hours of it, maybe a little more lately. There are so many things that to me it reminds me of like Deus Ex Mankind.
Did you get out of the? That's going to be a rough thing to say. So Horizon Zero Dawn starts off and you're in your tribal camp, and then eventually you leave there. Did you leave? Okay, that's all I just want to make sure, because the beginning is like much different than what I think. The reason Horizon Zero Dawn has merits is because it's one of the best looking games of the year, and it also is a game that lets players choose how they want to play it. Whether you want to do like very run up and like be dexterous, if you want to be stealthy, if you want to just go run in and gun. There's a lot of cool enemy design and variety in the enemies, but I agree with you. A lot of it can just be like, oh, so you don't want to investigate the world like you do with Zelda or even other open world games. The climbing leaves a little bit to be desired. Honestly, Horizon Zero Dawn didn't even make my top 10. So I agree with you. It's a flawed game. I think it has an interesting story. It at least has a very interesting mystery that propels you through the story. But once it's all said and done, that's a game that I said when I was done, I really want to go back and finish it. And right now on my Xbox, I'm playing Assassin's Creed Syndicate, and I haven't picked up Horizon Zero Dawn, the case, probably in 6 months. So it's a good game. It's a fun game that I would recommend people play. I just don't think it's one of the best games of the year.
Yeah, and I was a lot harder on it from the moment I started playing it. I was really down on it, and then I kept going back to it, and there's a lot good there. I just think that it's not executed super well, and
a bit messy, for sure.
And I think they bit off a bit more than they could chew. But there are still so many things. It really reminds me of Deus Ex: Mankind Divided and Human Revolution, where those are games that I wouldn't recommend to everybody because they have a lot of flaws. But I really enjoy the lore, the world, and the loop of those games. So, whereas the things that might happen in a Deus Ex game, the last two in particular, because they're completely different from the first two, might be boring to a lot of people. Like that combat loop in Deus Ex isn't boring to me because I'm so involved in it and it's right up my alley. Whereas Horizon Zero Dawn, there are problems basically everywhere, but the rest of it has so much heart. It's really trying. And you can tell that this team was so happy not to make a Killzone game that it was like, okay, the combat has these stunning moments where a Dinobot comes in and breaks things down. But then there's, points where I don't get a lot of satisfaction out of the combat side. I don't know what the game totally wants me to do in terms of, I'm like, okay, it wants me to dodge, but dodging doesn't really dodge out of everything.
Hey man,
but there's not really other options.
Man. There is a million options in that game, and that's why I think it comes down to how much you want to be told how to play and have like a specific set of tools that you know how to use in conjunction. Like there's a whole mess of things you can do with setting traps, and I didn't do any of that because I'm not somebody who sets traps, except for in the end when it was kind of OP. But that's what I like about Horizon Zero Dawn is that it does give you a way out of every combat scenario, or give you a way in, even if you run out of all ammo. And then the only direct comparison I can draw it to is Zelda, because it's the only other game that used the bow and did the like slow down in midair and shoot. It's like really the only other game that did that as much. I think that Horizon Zero Dawn does a better job of having a bow and arrow, especially with things like you can knock back 2 arrows at once and stuff. There's a bunch of different elemental stuff. I think that Horizon Zero Dawn is a better bow and arrow fighting game than Zelda, but I think Zelda's just a better game. I can agree with that.
But like I say, the more that I've played it, the more that it's grown on me, and I like what they've done. It's just, I think it came out at a bad time against Zelda, and it was more like I was going against the fundamental part of it, where it's like, I don't like open world games that hold your hands and fill up the map. I think that they had great ideas, and because they wanted to go open world, might not have been the best idea for that one.
Yeah, it probably could have worked better linear. All I'm saying is we're like an hour and 30 minutes into this. Right?
Okay, well, I'll rush through some of these, then I'll try to catch up to your
I don't
ones
want
that you've listed.
Top 5. Yeah.
All right, so I'm going to say my number 9 is going to be Fire Pro World. Yeah, this is Fire Pro World wrestling game. This is a great series of wrestling games, and this is just another updated version of it. It's nice to see it come back. The great thing about it is that it works really well with the Steam Workshop, because now you can easily grab all these edited wrestlers, because it doesn't come with any of the North American wrestlers, but now with Steam you can in an instant do something that used to take a lot of hacking. You can easily pop that stuff in there in seconds, and you can have basically all the wrestlers you've ever wanted. However, I do think that it's
got that Mugen kind of thing.
But that engine needs to be maybe updated a little bit more. The combat mechanics. It's definitely way better than WWE 2K, but it's not better than the old N64 games.
That's not hard to do.
No.
Be better than 2K.
All right, I'm going to put on here... What Remains of Edith Finch?
That is my number 4. That is my number 4.
Okay, we can talk about it then if you like.
Okie doke.
Okay, What Remains of Edith Finch? I'm going to put on here Uncharted Lost Legacy.
It's not on my list, but it probably should have been. Now that I think about it, that probably would have been like number 10 or number 9.
Yeah.
Uncharted Lost Legacy is a better Uncharted game than Uncharted 4.
Yeah, I liked Uncharted 4 a lot. I liked the more adult step that Neil Druckmann took over Amy Hennig's a bit more pulpy actionness, the approaching sort of midlife crisis. What is it to be happy? I think that they dealt with the relationships really well. Some of the moments that happened in Uncharted were so realistic in terms of the interpersonal stuff. Were some of the biggest epic moments. Lost Legacy does a great job of continuing the relationship dynamics between Chloe and Nadine. I thought it had a pretty strong opening. It had a really flabby middle. I didn't like the open world segments. I didn't think that fit in an Uncharted game.
I thought that was the best thing that could have happened, because really Uncharted should have. I don't think Uncharted should go fully open world. I just think that they need to start making their environments a bit bigger,
a bit more exploration.
Yeah, they have tunnel vision sometimes when it comes to some of the ones, especially like Uncharted 4 or Uncharted 3. They were very cinematic games, and I think that can kind of lock it down, because honestly, at this point, Uncharted climbing, like Assassin's Creed does climbing better than that. And I think the combat is still like middling. I liked, like you said, I liked the interpersonal stuff between Chloe and Nadine. And I liked the environment a lot too. It was very, very lush. It was a very pretty game too.
All right. Yeah. And Uncharted was what I needed for Lost Legacy that would have put it up in my actual top 5. Cause for anyone watching, my bottom 5, because I didn't play a lot of games this year, nowhere near as much as Matt. These are just sort of my honorable mentions, and then my top 5 is an actual top 5. Lost Legacy needed more. It needed more set pieces, more of the Uncharted set pieces. It only really had the one at the end with the train. The first one where you're running on the rooftops is close, but I was just waiting for that. It needed
just the one with the big statue. Like towards the kind of end there,
just wasn't enough.
That's more of a climbing thing.
I didn't have enough of the moments where I'm playing an Uncharted game and I go, I cannot believe I'm playing this in a game. Didn't have enough of those. All right, let's see here. Sonic Mania, I wanted to put on there.
Oh, Sonic Mania is not in my top 10. This is what happens when I forget about games that came out.
Well, yeah,
we talked about it.
When you got to sort through 100 of them. Sonic Mania, fantastic version of what came out before. They finally made another good Sega game. I'm so happy that they actually trusted somebody who had previously only done ROM hacks and ports of Sonic games. Sega to realize that somebody else could do it better. They recreated the best moments of original Sonic and then expanded on all the best parts and left out all the boring things like slow platforming and puzzles. And they although they were sticking with the Sonic two-dimensional tropes, they were actually very inventive with the different ways you could move Sonic around. They made it feel more like Sonic was in a pinball machine. A lot of inventive ways of using movement, constantly fast, switching direction, doing what Sonic does best, having lots of speed, momentum, and then creating levels that have multi-levels, 3 different tiers, alternate routes and paths. So I thought that was a fantastic one.
I think Sonic Mania and Thimbleweed Park are actually kind of similar. They're revivals of genres that people liked, or specific games people liked, but then you take out the meddling stuff that people were so about, and you kind of refine it down to a very, very focused final product. And if you're a fan of that kind of stuff, you're going to like it. So I think Sonic Mania and Thimbleweed Park both hit the same kind of things for different audiences.
All right, we are now in the real top 5. Hit me with your top 5.
Hit me with your best shot, baby. Here's what I'll do. I think we'll our lists are gonna. How about I give you my 4?
Okay.
My 5, I think, is your number 1, my guy.
Oh, okay.
Or well.
Give me your 4.
What Remains of Edith Finch. It's a good time. It's about a girl. She goes back to her family home. It looks like the Weasley house from Harry Potter. It's like 20 stories high, and it's all leaning. And she's going to investigate a curse that has been plaguing her family for as long as she can remember, because she's the last remaining family member in her long line of Finches. She is Edith Finch, and she has finally gone home to find out if there is a curse. And the game plays through vignettes of all of her different family members as you find their rooms that they live at in the house, and you play through their final moments. Each story or vignette is different, both in tone, both in gameplay, and in story. So the death scene you're gonna get for the uncle who is into guns and cameras is going to be much different from the death scene you got of the child star who became a teen who was a burnt out child star. There's a lot of good gameplay and a lot of good subversion of expectations. There's a lot of variety too. So like I said, you have an entire memory that takes place through cameras shots. You have an entire memory that takes place during, oh my God, what my brain. It's like a comic book, which does some of the best comic book visuals that I've seen since 13, which was on, I think, PlayStation 2 or something like that. It all culminates in a really, really good final kind of story. There's some good draws to old games that are made, well, not old games, but the previous games made by the same studio. If you played games like the Unfinished Swan, there's calls to that. I think that overall it talks about a lot of important issues and handles them with a nice hand, similar to what like Senua's Sacrifice did, but in a less offensive way. It talks about things like depression, anxiety, delusions of grandeur, and a lot of things like what it means to be a family, what it means to have loss, and how things like that can split through generations. I don't know. I might be getting a bit too open about it and like trying to point out the philosophy. But as a game, it's just a really, really satisfying 2 to 3 hour playthrough. I would say that it's the only game that I can think of that has not only, like my girlfriend, she doesn't play a lot of games, but she played through Edith Finch in one sitting. The same thing rings true for my co-host of my podcast, Super Gamecast 64. His wife played through all of it in one sitting. I think it's a game that, whether or not this is your merit or what you value in a game, it is a game that is a great narrative, and it's welcoming to players of any skill level. So even if you don't play games or you have a semblance of how to control like the first person camera, you can experience a really, really magical kind of thing. It doesn't really, you don't get stuck at all. You know, it's not a puzzle. You're not trying to figure anything out. It's kind of just, it moves along, tells you the story. Whether or not you connect to the story, different, you know, people are going to get different things, but I was really connected with it. It's the only game I gave a 10 out of 10 to this year. But even then, it's only 4 on my list. So 10 out of 10 games don't necessarily mean they're the best games of the year. It's just a very, very focused experience, you know? So, hey, that was my number 4.
I think What Remains of Edith Finch, there was one vignette in particular that I thought was one of my favorite moments of not just of this year, but of, you know, in the last few years of gaming, where one of the memories where you're working in a factory.
Ooh, don't spoil that.
I'm not gonna say what happens.
Yeah.
The person works in a factory, and what it does by using the actual act of playing the memory is an experience and a storytelling experience that can only be done with video games. And I really loved that. And I thought that was really special. And it hit me in a lot of different ways, and, you know, things that I've lived in my own life and other people have lived. And it was really touching, and it was something that I'd never seen done before so well, and will stick with me forever. And with that game, there were, for me, it's just there varying elements where that one was amazing, and then there were some other ones that I didn't really connect with as well. But it's a really special game.
Yeah, there's some in there where I can admit to. There's like one where you control a kite and you're like kind of like a rebellious younger brother kind of character.
Yeah, I didn't really see the connection there with that one.
Well, and that's the thing is like once I played through that game like 3 or 4 times, and the more you dig into it, the more you can see the connections of. But at first blush, it is just like a bunch of really stupid people that died in really ridiculous ways, and you're like, what are you doing?
Yeah.
But if you kind of just let yourself go with it, I think it's enjoyable. But yeah, it's on Xbox, on PlayStation, it's on Steam. It's like $20. If you're into games like Gone Home, Everybody's Gone to the Rapture, those kind of like, narrative-driven games, Tacoma, you'll enjoy it, I think. It's just a matter of how much mileage you're going to get out of it, how much you'll enjoy it. All right. What is your number 5?
My number 5 is a game called Seed Ship.
I do not know what you're talking about, so please regale me.
This is a text game, parser text. So it's
like Zork?
It's like that, yeah. So what you do is you are the AI of a ship that has the last remnants of the human race. You're just sent off into the galaxy, and what happens is you have a list of all your different your cultural stuff, your science, your sensors, your temperature, your scanners, the people on board, blah blah blah, your satellites and your engines.
Trying to balance the levels.
You're not balancing the levels. What you're doing is a dilemma will come up. They'll say, we're on track to we're going to get hit by a meteor, and you can either sacrifice the cultural section, that'll get hit, or the scanners will get hit. And then you get hit, and you see the number on the percentage go down. And then you'll come across a planet, and maybe it has great gravity, but it has crap temperature, and a whole host of other reasons. And you have to decide, do we stop here and end the game and colonize it, or do you keep going? If you keep going, you're at the risk of losing more things about your ship and about the human race. And if you stay there, then it might not be the best planet. There's like probably hundreds of different endings, and you can play a game in 2 seconds. You can play a game in 25 minutes.
Yeah.
And you just make these really fun sort of Star Trek-y type decisions of, ooh, what's the best thing to sacrifice? And what happens is when you land, it tells you this really nice story like, well, because this was a planet basically completely covered in ocean, the human race had to live above the ocean in these walled cities, and they had the cultural things to entertain them, but they didn't have the technology and the resources. They became a primitive people, and then the people with the money ruled over them like tyrants. And there's a lot of like this huge range of like dystopian to utopian futures, and I just loved it.
It sounds really, is this a Steam only, or was this on Switch?
I think you can play this on mobile platforms, and I think I just played this on a website. It's free.
Shout out to the indies, man. If anything, 2017 has shown not only that indies are a huge beckoning force, not like that we haven't seen that coming, but also showed that the mid-price tier is really something that's kind of coming to its own. So not only is 2017 a great year for games, but it is highlighting every level of game developer from the top AAA, fuck you EA, to like the very, very bottom student games. So I think 2017 is a great range of games too. So shouts out to Siege Ship.
All the ones that we have on the board right now, hardly any of them are AAA.
Yeah, now that I think about that, there's like maybe two. Do you want me to do my number 3?
Sure.
Maybe we should. Here's what I'm going to do real quick. Can you entertain the audience real quick while I just send you my top 5 so you know what?
Okay, well, we'll read off some of the comments. We've got Ted Belcher in here, who certainly has a lot of interesting opinions. Ted Belcher was not a fan of Fire Pro. He says the actual wrestling is garbo, but he does like the rosters. And I'll agree with you there, Ted. It's something that I thought was, you just, don't write it in Skype. You just showed everybody what it was real quick, and then it disappeared.
Hey, hope you guys like that little sneak peek.
Write it in Hangouts.
Well, too late. Now you guys know what my number 1 is.
It went up really quick, and then it flashed away, so maybe people didn't see it already.
It's fine.
And I'll believe with Teddy Boy about that. Corey saw it. Corey doesn't miss a thing.
Don't spoil it for other people, but it's fine. It's just that when we get to the top 5, I think that this year it means a lot of different things to different people. And I don't want to cannibalize any of Matt's top picks or have him cannibalize any of my top picks just by the variety.
Well, like I say, if it's a duplicate one, then
we just talk about it once.
Let's just talk about it when it's at its highest point.
Yeah, okay.
What's your 5?
Zelda, Breath of the Wild.
All right, that's ranked higher for me, so.
Yeah.
All right, my number 4 is Stories Untold.
Oh, I remember you playing this. You did the walkthrough for this one, right?
I did. So this is a 4-episode throwback to visual novel and text adventures. It's sort of a horror thriller suspense, but it doesn't have any jump scares. And
nice.
For the majority of the time I played this, I constantly had chills running up and down my spine and on my skin. I was so glued to these things as you're constantly getting pushed closer and closer to this dread. The story was really well told. The story's untold. And the voice acting is well done. There's 4 different types of way you play. You play as a text adventure in one section. You do some kind of like weird medical examination thing. You're not really sure exactly what's going on. You're like cracking open a safe. There's a twist, which is nice, a little bit predictable, but overall I thought it was really, really solid. Really, really well done. It didn't feel like an indie game at all, and only in terms of, like, with Observer, you can feel where the budget was low.
Yes.
But
especially on console, yes.
Yeah, and then Stories Untold, other than its length, nothing about it betrayed that it was a cheaper game. It's if you like suspense, thriller, horror stuff, but you don't just want to have screams in your face that are really loud and visually loud, this was an amazing tale of suspense.
My number 3 is Super Mario Odyssey. Where is that? Is that higher for you?
That is, yes, a little bit higher for me.
I think that maybe my number 2 isn't on your list or is low enough. What's your number 3?
My number 3 was Cuphead.
Yeah, well, perfect. All right, that's my number 2.
Okay. All right, so let's talk about it. It's your number 2.
Yeah, I mean, Cuphead is. We talked about it for Best Surprise, and I think when we did that last week or a few days ago, I think we really encapsulated what what made Cuphead so good is that not only was it a game we saw a little bit of and we're like, oh, wow, what is that? That looks amazing. It was a game that they had a vision for. It was a very small indie studio out of Canada, MDHR, and they got a lot of funding from Microsoft to make a bigger and better game. And oftentimes that ruins games. It ruins and it compromises the vision that they originally had. But when Cuphead came out, when I booted it up, everything was exactly what I thought it was going to be, which is insane for the hype. The amount of frames of animation for any given boss transformation is ridiculous. Considering it's hand-drawn, the amount of work that went into it, just you can see the amount of passion that went into it, and it's reflective in the overall quality, the polish. Almost every single thing in this game does not feel like you couldn't be like, well, this is my favorite boss, because well, you could, but every other boss is just as fun or just as inventive. There never feels like there's copies of anything. It beckons for just one more, playthrough, or, oh, I beat this guy. Like, oh, let me just see what this next boss is. It's constantly inventing new things. And it's also a game that a lot of my non-gamer friends or people who didn't play games or hardcore games that are supposed to be difficult like Cuphead, a lot of people were drawn to it from its cutesy visuals to its interesting kind of direction. I think it was a big game this year, not just for gamers, but for people in general. It was like it was something that I saw people being like, what is that? That looks like cartoons. It is, but you can play it. Crazy stuff, dude. What did you think?
We used to have some amazing pixel art, and that's gone away because it's too expensive. So you'll see pixel art now, but it's nowhere near what we saw from like SNK, and what Sega was doing in like the Marvel versus Capcom 2. Yeah, that sprite-based art is gone. But this production that they did, if you look into the amount of work it took them to do this will probably never be done again. This was if any business person asked what their business plan was to make this game, the amount of work it took for them to do this, the amount of risk they did financially. I think they mortgaged their house to do it and then remortgaged their house again to expand on it. This is probably once in a lifetime, unless they make a sequel out of it, but
they will.
It's astounding. And it's not just that part is technically impressive, but the actual game is really good.
That's the thing. That's the thing, too, is a lot of people gave Cuphead props for saying that, like, there's a bunch of different weapon types and you can use them. And that's where I kind of bounce back. It's this weird thing. It's like, I don't want to argue against the game because I love it so much. But anyone who says that you need to use all the weapons doesn't know how to play Cuphead, because you just buy Charge Shot. Maybe not anymore because they did patch it. But you just buy Charge Shot, and that's how you win the game. And I heard a lot of people saying, like, well, some levels you want to use this one, and other levels you want to use this one. And I didn't see that at all. I bought Charge Shot and beat everybody with it because it was the weapon that did the most damage, and if you were accurate, you would just win. So I didn't see a lot of the variety in playing the game, but I don't want to give it a knock for that, just because I'm somebody who has Mega Man tattooed on me. And like I said earlier, I beat Mega Man 1 through 6 in like a day, just for fun. So maybe I have a leg up on, shooter platformer kind of games. So it's hard for me to be like, oh, that's just people being bad. But that's the one thing I don't agree with. I think that the weapon variety was for nil because the Charge Shot was so overpowered. But continue what you were saying.
Well, yeah, I guess some people could look at that in a positive sense, in that it allows you, if you have enough skill, to play with anything. But if you're thinking that it's just because that one is so powerful that you're almost silly to not to use it.
Well, and they have patched it now. That was one of the first things I saw, is that it did so much damage, and if you're somebody who played Mega Man X, you're so used to just charging up a shot and then letting it go as soon as it's the perfect timing.
Yeah.
Cuphead's Charge Shot is like easy as hell to use. So maybe it was just me specifically having the ability to play a Mega Man-like game. But I do like, it's very inventive. And the shop is cool. And it all evokes that era that they were trying to get. That cartoon 20s, 30s?
Yeah, right? I would say like late 20s.
Without all the bad stuff. It removes all the bad stuff. It doesn't really ever approach it, and that's not a knock against it. Because that era of cartoons wasn't necessarily the most PC stuff. No. But it does a great job emulating what we would wish that to be. Looking back on the history of that kind of cartoon style, I wish that Cuphead was what it was all the time, the pinnacle of. And I think that's why Cuphead like you said, it's just so goddamn unique, dude. There's nothing. We'll never see anything quite like it. We'll see a lot of imitations of it. We'll never see anything that's quite like it in terms of passion and the amount of work that went into it.
Yeah, and that's on the presentation side, but in terms of the actual mechanics, I think it goes back to the well of what Mega Man did so well, and that part feels really good. And making a platformer that feels good, the physics, the height that they jump, the weight of the character, how many shots they can do, that's not an easy thing to do. And I mean, if you just go back and take a look at the 8-bit and 16-bit era, and you'll see a lot of platforming games that felt gross. And this one did a great job of making you feel very, very nimble. I think the dash works really, really well. There are
especially
some
with these big character sprites too. You're talking about like something like Super Metroid, where you have like, you know, Samus is this big. You can do a lot of cool animations with the pixel art. But Cuphead is very big art styles, and their ability to manage hitboxes and make everything feel fluid while maintaining this cartoon visual is really, really impressive. I think the only knock I have against it is that the parry can sometimes be a little bit confusing.
Yeah, I found that a bit funky. I spent a lot of time just trying to perfect that.
I think they fixed it now.
Sometimes I would just like rapid fire the button and it would work. Sometimes I would hit it, which felt like way too early, and that seemed to be the golden spot for it.
They want you to hit it like a half second earlier than you think you should hit it. That's what I found it to be.
Which to me feels like that should be punished, but maybe that should be a little. If it's going to be that wide on the early, it should be that wide on the late as well.
Yes, because the window is weird. It's a punishing game too, and at times I think for a strength and a weakness. But I think even that's what we're talking about right now. Like saying like the iframes on your parry hit are a little bit like we're in the minutia, and if that's the first thing we're going to when we're talking about negatives, like. Or the second thing, that shows you just how good of a package the game is, that we're immediately going to a nitpicky kind of thing. We're trying to give any negatives towards it.
So my number 2 is Mario.
Well, we talked a lot about Mario, I think, in the music, at least what it does musically. What I will say about Mario, so you beat Mario, you hit credits. Have you? We're not going to do any spoilers. There's a place you go after the credits. You saw that, right?
Yeah.
Okay. Did that bump this like 3 spots up your list?
Yeah, it did. And that's the weird thing about this game is the pacing is strange. For me, it was a battle between Mario and my number 1, which is Zelda. But Zelda, it was never going to beat Zelda, and I think Mario and Cuphead were actually pretty close as well. But Mario was a little bit more polished than Cuphead in terms of mechanics. What Mario does so well is that it's so good at signposting. It's so good at showing you the way to go. It knows what you're going to do and offers a helping hand. It's right there with you. It's like Mario is like 2 Russian ice dancers that have been skating together for the first 25 years of their life, and they know everyone's move. It knows that it knows what the player's going to try to do. It makes every instinct you have it's there to catch you. Like, we know you're going to want to press jump here and run fast, so we're going to make sure that is an equal length. It never punishes you for running at full speed and jumping for something. It also does a great job of showing you with the level geometry that's not something you can jump towards. Don't even try it. It doesn't. Whereas a weaker platforming game might have something that you couldn't jump to, but would put it so close that you think you could. So if something is visibly looks like you could do it, then if you try enough, you're going to be able to get to it. If they don't even want you to waste your time, they do a great job of like, nope, that's way too tall. That's way too far.
I think the reason that Cuphead was above my Mario on my list specifically is that Cuphead immediately draws you in. Mario Odyssey, there's at least 3 worlds I can think of. The big beach one, the one that has like it's red and it's like woodsy, and then there's the big red kind of towers, like the industrial towers. And then the Luncheon Kingdom, I immediately wanted to leave those places. I played them for 20 minutes and I was like, I'm out. I'm sorry. This is trash. And it wasn't until you beat the credits. That's what's weird about Mario Odyssey is that it's like the first time you play through it, it's almost like a pass. You're just kind of looking and seeing things. And then once you hit credits, you go to a really cool area that we won't spoil. But then they drop like at least 200 to 300% more of the collectibles, the stars or the moons or whatever, back in these old worlds, and then says, okay, so you reached however many moons we wanted you to get to beat the game. But if you want to unlock the ending levels, you want to get 500 moons. So Mario is similar to Nier in the way that Nier is like, hey, to get the most majority of the original content, you're going to see credits, but then you're going to continue to play the game. That's how Mario Odyssey was for me. You play through the game and you see the areas, and some of them are cool and some of them are garbage. And then it isn't until you go back and actually play the real content, which is post credits, where you decide what is good and what is bad and what you enjoy about the game. I think Mario Odyssey is an amazing game. It's super polished. And unfortunately, it doesn't hit all the things, but I'm also like a Sunshine apologist, so that's me. It doesn't hit all the things that Galaxy did. Like, at no point did it feel challenging to me, because dying in Mario in Odyssey spawns you like half a meter back from where you fell, and only costs you 10 coins, and those 10 coins can be picked up immediately around you. So there truly is no punishment, which lets you explore and stuff a lot. But then to that point, in the first pass of the game, there's not a lot to explore. It's not until you go through it again later where there's enough things that you're going to want to be like, oh, I'm going to go over here and over here and over here. And I understand why they did that.
I think with Mario, Nintendo is constantly designing Mario to be everyone's first video game.
Yeah.
They want it to be so easy, and then they hit you with the really hard stuff, but not until you've proven yourself for a long time.
I just think that Mario Odyssey is probably the best we'll ever. It's the best way to control Mario. I'll tell you right now. The throwing the hat and then diving to the hat and then throwing it again, like all that stuff is fantastic. I think that all the things they let you do with the transformations are really, really cool. If at time a bit gimmicky. My main issue with Mario, and the reason it was lower on my list, is because, like I said, the music wasn't entirely memorable for me, except for a few handouts or a few standouts. And that's the same thing with the worlds, you know, like the worlds were fun, but unlike Mario 64, I can't really remember any specific moon. Like I can remember like the Babam King on the top of the Babam Hill in Super Mario 64, or with Yoshi in Super Mario Galaxy 2, going back to the Super Mario 64 kingdom in Galaxy 2. That stuff was really, really cool. Odyssey feels like a lot of cool ideas and a lot of really good polish, but it lacks a soul. It lacks like
it really does. It lacks a cohesive theme to it. It feels very generic. And that the best part about it is definitely the best controlling Mario. It'll be hard to go back to not having the hat, because the hat so works with him. Whereas I didn't like the FLUDD.
The ways you can move around, especially you can cheap some jumps. I was able to get some moons. It was like, hey, it's up here, and you're gonna have to do all this kind of stuff. And I was like, oh, or I could triple jump, and then side jump, and then hat throw when I'm there.
But that's not cheesing it. That's using like the skill of it and the mastery to bypass it.
Same argument, but that's what I liked about the movement. And like you said, if you lose the hat, that's so much. It's so good.
Yeah. Whereas in Sunshine, the FLUDD was so different from how Mario actually controlled and slowed him down a lot of the times that it made the platforms have to be really far apart, and it really slowed the game down. Whereas Cappy just gives him another platform. Mario's a guy jumps on platforms. Cappy now becomes a movable platform. It's the perfect addition.
For your first 20 minutes, you're like, what is this? This feels like garbage. I don't like this at all. And then after like 25 minutes, you're like, wow, Mario. It feels like this was how Mario always has been since Super Mario 64. It feels like his hat has always been throwable. And that's like, I think that it makes a lot of leaps in gameplay. And I think the idea of taking a more star-based, like, hey, here's your world and here's your 10 or 15 challenges, like Sunshine or Galaxy or whatever, and changed it into kind of this collectathon sort of thing, is a bit of like a step back more towards Banjo-Kazooie. And that's why I laugh when people are like, it's like, oh, Banjo is a collectathon, and then everyone's all praising Mario Odyssey because there's 100 moons per map or whatever. But that's like interesting to me. I like the direction they went with that, but then again, I'm a Banjo fan, so that's why I like it. It's just, I think a lot of the in-between is forgettable. Like the Brutals, the Rabid things. Like, I don't remember any of the boss fights, to be honest.
No, and Mario boss fights have been pretty bad for a long time. They've never really been memorable. Mario 1 was the same Bowser fight forever, over and over again. I think Mario 2 probably had the best boss fights.
I still remember Galaxy's Mario thing or Bowser fight. Where you had to run around the big lava thing. Where in this, it was like, wasn't his hat a boxing glove, or it had boxing gloves on it? Or did you possess? See, that's the thing. I played this game like literally 2 months ago, and I'm trying to remember how Bowser worked.
You would capture something he threw you, and then have boxing gloves, and you'd punch him.
Okay, because it was 3D World where you had the Cadillac. I like that more. And it's ultimately what it comes. But these are all, much like Cuphead, we're nitpicking. It's not nitpicking to say it lacks a soul or it's generic. Those are valid claims. But I think the things we go to, like the kind of magic you pulled out of Mario, there is definitely those instances, like when Jump Up Superstar plays and after credits, when you hit that area, those, wow, childhood nostalgia, fill me up with those butterflies, Nintendo. But a lot of it is just like, okay, I'm going to try and find this moon, or, and that's kind of where I struggled with it. I still think it's a fantastic game.
Yeah.
I give it a 9.5. Don't let me talking right now make you think I don't like Mario Odyssey.
Yeah, it's absolutely fantastic. It kind of reminds me of when I saw one of my favorite comedians from the early 2000s, David Cross, and I saw him in 2016. And a lot of his show was not very good, but then he would have these few moments that were so shockingly good, it reminded you of how special it was. Whereas this Mario Odyssey still has those moments that are like super standout, you're not going to find anywhere else, but the rest of it didn't always keep up. But on the other side, it was so polished. It's just one of the most polished and well-designed games that even when it doesn't have those magic moments, that soul, it's still carried by the polish and the shine.
Fun.
And they were trying, it's just constant fun. And they were trying something different. I think they were really influenced by what they did with Breath of the Wild. And this is this is basically Mario of the Wild, the way they spread those things out. Even though the moons are less memorable, I think that it fits the play style of being able to, why don't you just try to get up there? Oh, you're bored of trying to get up there? All right, walk over here. There's going to be something else for you to do.
Well, and they expect it too. Like people talk about that all the time. If you listen to any Game of the Year conversation, people are going to be like, "Oh, I jumped up on some area and then I found some coins." But that's the thing, is that Nintendo, it seems like they understand, like you said, they understand where players are going to want to jump. They understand where players are going to die, and they are making it to support the gamer as they play through this game that they have very well laid out. I think that's what's awesome about Mario. We're going to butt heads on Zelda, which is
sure
silly, but.
Real quick, Rossner wanted to say he absolutely loved the hat mechanic and will agree that it is way better than Flood, but he still thinks Sunshine is good in its own way.
Well, and that's the thing, too. When it comes to Odyssey, when I was reviewing it, it was kind of last minute because Misha was supposed to review it, and I think I went for it. Odyssey, Mario games for me, I've always loved. I've always loved 3D Marios. Almost every single one I'd give a 10 to. And that's what I mean by I'm a Sunshine apologist, is even Sunshine, dude, like I fondly remember the area where you have to clean up all the goo on the big beach, and then you go into like the hotel. Each Mario game, for as many problems as it might have, it always has that magic, that soul, that love. And even Sunshine is something I liked a lot. But Mario Odyssey was the first one that gave me pause, and I was like, is this a 10? Or is it more
really?
like a 9? And that's the thing, like there was enough reasons when I was sitting there, and this is something you probably don't hear from journalists very often, because when I'm doing a review, it's hard to come to a, especially when you're giving a game a high score, it's hard to be like, is this a perfect game? And for me, Edith Finch, when I finished it, I was just like 10 out of 10. It's there. I don't need to argue with myself about it. It made that connection. But Odyssey, there was those lingering things of it does lack a soul. I did not like some of these worlds. And am I giving it a bias because it's Mario? And I think that Mario Odyssey, it's wild to me because it's one of the most polished games of all time. But it's the first Mario game where I think if I was reviewing Galaxy and Galaxy 2, those would have been 10s. And I think Sunshine might have been the only one that was like a 9. But for Odyssey, I thought, like Super Mario 3D Worlds, I would have given a 10 to. I think they're fantastic, even though it's just a bunch of cat stuff,
Mm-hmm.
Like, I think that's what was interesting about Odyssey for me, is that I did pause and go, is this a 10 or is this a 9.5 or is it even a 9? And then when I gave it the 9.5, I was like, that feels right, which is weird.
It's really slow going. The first couple hours I had with it, I thought, what's everybody talking about? This is very average. It's super polished,
by it
but it's it was above average. And, I think, and also you can be blinded by the Mario thing and the extreme level of how slick it is, and they also really hit you over the head with a lot of nostalgia in this game. Is a bit too much at times.
Yeah, I can agree with that.
It started feeling like a Mario Kart game, where a Mario Kart comes out each time, each version, and then they include like 20 previous tracks.
Gotta get that baby park, baby. Go around those circles.
That's right.
You know what? Here's what I'll do. I'll do my number 1, and then we can do Zelda because All
right. What's your number 1, baby?
It was very difficult to decide. but it was Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus.
Wow.
Yeah, and it's hard because, when you make a list, and especially for someone in my position where I'm a reviewer before anything else, really, people look at my lists, I think, sometimes, and they're expecting an objective truth of what's the most, like the most polished game. That's why people see Zelda on my list at number 5, and they're going to be like, are you crazy? Like, Zelda's a game I would have reviewed at a 9 or 9.5 as well. But it's like, I don't know. Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus, Wolfenstein 3D was my first game ever. And Wolfenstein 2 is a continuation of that character. And it's really hard to talk about this without spoiling anything, because a lot of the game is carried on the shoulders of its narrative. And a good portion of that game sometimes isn't fun to play, to be honest. I think some people oversell it in how the stealth isn't as good. I put it on easy mode and blast through everybody, and I had a decent time. But it spoke to me in a weird way. It spoke to me immediately in its opening hour because it started to go places that most video game stories don't even dare to touch, with racism, with bigotry, fundamental discrimination, and how it bakes these kind of themes into a world where the Nazis have won and overtaken the U.S. as a superpower. And it was just mind-boggling to me just how much I took pause during some of these cutscenes and was like, wow, that hits emotionally, or wow, that's just a good combination of dialogue, of written, and the music too. Like, that's where it pushes up. Music as it stands alone is one thing, but when you have these like flashbacks, this is in the first hour, where BJ Blazkowicz, the main character, you're starting to look back at his past, and you see his dad reprimanding him for hanging out with a black girl because he's white and they're these Southerners. And then so as a punishment, he forces you to shoot your own dog. It gets dark. And when those kind of music tones start creeping in and you're like, this is uncomfortable, but it's uncomfortable in the way that a very, very good film is uncomfortable. That's where Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus is one of the only video game stories in recent memory that I can think of, besides Edith Finch, that really grabbed me and was like, hey, this is a story with characters that you can care about. And back when you were 2 years old, me personally, back when you were 2 years old, you were pressing the shift button and you were shooting Nazis as this guy. And now in the year 2017, you know about his past, about his, and Wolfenstein 2: The New Colossus is also about the main character coming to terms with his own failures in his body. He's been fighting Nazis for his entire life. His body is failing him, and these things that he's supposed to hold up, these ideals that he's supposed to fight against, but his body is failing him. And in that way, too, the game goes to some nuts places. If you're listening to me right now and you're like, I don't buy it, maybe if you don't care about the game too much, look up like top 10 best Wolfenstein 2 moments, and you'll understand, because that is a game that hour by hour by hour by hour, there is something story related that just punches you in the gut, that speaks to me on some fundamental level, or from a character, growing up literally my entire life knowing this character, to see him go from a pixel who, barely said a word to a fully fleshed out character, and he still feels like the same BJ. It's crazy to me. Yeah, I don't know. Like, Edith Finch touches some areas that are like emotional, impacting, or speak to me in some way. But Wolfenstein 2, when it gets into those, some people can say it's ham-fisted, but Brian Bloom's performance is haunting. It is something that will stay with me for a very long time. And I think even though Wolfenstein 2 is like the middle of a trilogy, it does a lot of things. It patches up. It gives you closure on things that were started on that original Xbox game, Return to Castle Wolfenstein. It closes a lot of things, and it opens a lot of new things. And just as a game, wow. We're used to first-person shooters not telling us very impacting stories and just being like, hey, shoot all the Nazis. And that's what Wolfenstein has been for a long time. But Wolfenstein tells a better story than even Modern Warfare did back in the day. And that's something to be said. So that's why it's at the top of my list. But then again, I'm someone who likes first-person shooters, and I like narrative stuff in games. So that's why it's at the top of my list. Some people didn't even put it on their top 10 list, and I can understand why. But
I didn't play it. I played New Order and Old Blood. And
well, then you should play 2, because that's the biggest issue, is that it's a continuation. So it's not like you can just pick up Wolfenstein 2 and be like, yeah, like you need to know what happened in Wolfenstein 1, the New Order, to have the appreciation. So unlike Mario Odyssey, where you can just pick it up and be like, yes, even though there's Mario games before this, it doesn't matter. Like Wolfenstein 2 is the sequel to Wolfenstein 1. It starts literally like 3 seconds after the first one ends. So
Okay.
yeah, so it's like one of those. It's a big ask too. Like, hey, play through a 12-hour game first, and then you can play this new 12-hour game. So
Well, when I picked up the older Wolfensteins, well, the
yeah, the
New
New Order or whatever.
yeah, and Old Blood, I was really surprised at how much story there was involved, and it was actually pretty interesting. And it was there were some of the gameplay elements I butted up against, and were fine to like work through. But
Yes.
if I wanted to play it as like a challenging shooter, I didn't find that super satisfying. But it definitely was one that I wanted to keep going with the story. So I'll probably eventually get to Wolfenstein 2, although a lot of the best moments have been spoiled for me. Maybe I'll wait like 3 to 6 months and then experience it on my own.
I think that a lot of the moments people talk about in that game are, big set piece moments or big moments where you meet characters and certain thing happens. And there's specifically maybe a 2 to 3 hour section towards the middle of the game where shit just goes nuts. And a lot of stuff happens back to back to back. That is some of the most shocking things I've seen in games. And as a statement, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, goes places with the stories that video games often fear to go and have never gone to this level of success. Like, that is just a flat out fact when we're talking about World War II, the Nazi regime, and how America deals with its racism. Some of the things can be a bit ham-fisted, but Wolfenstein 2, beat for beat, it just tells a story. And it's weird to me to think that my number one game of 2017, I probably won't go back and play until I can forget enough. But that's what I mean, is that even though some of those things have been spoiled, a lot of Wolfenstein 2, some people would joke and say, like, it's a little bit emo, but a lot of those moments that worked for me, when Brian Bloom's character of BJ just kind of shuts down in this weird gritty voice, just like, I don't know how long I can do this. It might be one more week. And he speaks in these very beautiful poems, and I don't know, dude. It's just like that
He's
game speaks to me.
your old Snake, your Metal Gear Solid 4 Solid Snake.
Yes, exactly. Every line is a poem. It's all a soliloquy. But
Wow.
yeah, Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus, it earns that spot.
It's it's interesting, and the function and the setup of your list, where Edith Finch was your 10 out of 10 and it's number 4. Wolfenstein 2, you can pick away at some of the parts, but is all about the emotional impact it had with you. And that's why these lists and reviews, and most of the time, they're all opinions. It's not we're trying to measure enjoyment that different people are going to have with varying different types of entertainment. I mean, Firewatch was one of my favorite games when it came out, and some people hated it, and I knew that there were flaws with it, but I couldn't replicate that impact that it had on me. Same with, one of the scenes in What Remains of Edith Finch. That's what stuck with me so well. And that's why, for me, Breath of the Wild, even though that I know it has lots of problems, was my number one, because the feeling I got when I was playing it reminded me of when I first started playing video games as a kid. And it was something that I had not felt in a Zelda game since Ocarina of Time.
I can agree with that completely.
And it was something that I hadn't felt in a lot of games. And, a lot of times I try games and I just think I'm too old for this. Maybe I'm just too bored of this. And I'll go away from games and I come back to games. But Breath of the Wild nailed what I was missing from games, and it did it in a way that addressed a lot of things I have problems with in games. That games can be too handholdy, that games are too obsessed with loading you up with 200 mini quests, that games force you to look away. They spend $100 million making this beautiful visual, have graphics, and then they make you look at a stupid mini map because that's the only way to get around. What Zelda did was that there wasn't a mini map. It would, for a really quick example, you get the ability to have an item that vibrates when a shrine is nearby. So when you hear the vibration, you know that now you need to look around. But that actually makes you look at the environment, notice what's going on. The pacing of the game, a lot of games start off, there's a lot of talking. They're trying to get you into the game by giving you lore, when really that's not. Games are the opposite of movies. You should act with the player and the character. You're the player. Act with the character first, and then you have that break. Exactly. So the beginning of Breath of the Wild, it's all action, very little story. You're learning about this character, you're learning about the world through actually experiencing it. And then by the time I got to my first rest stop, I was totally ready to sit down, talk to people. And for me, the pacing of it was perfect throughout the whole game. I loved the ability of, like, a lot of people criticize the dungeons. I was never actually a big fan Like the long dungeons were never the greatest part of a Zelda game for me, and I was totally ready for them to take, instead of having 9 or 10 huge dungeons, do what is it, like 100 of these shrines. And that way, in an open world, if I feel like doing a shrine, I can do that for 5 minutes. If I get frustrated, I can pop off and I can do another shrine, or I can climb something, or I can fight something, or I can head off.
I almost hate that they forced you to do those because I like the shrines. I like the way that the shrines, kind of like you said, they take these bigger dungeons that we're used to and break them up into smaller pieces, so you get puzzle piecemeal, a lot of combat ones in there too. My problem is that they still insisted on doing a elemental, or here's the 4 things you should go and do, similar to what Skyward Sword did. And the reason I didn't like Skyward Sword is, this is the reason I don't like Zelda Breath of the Wild. Let me rephrase it. This is the reason why I'm not as hot on Zelda Breath of the Wild as everybody else, because like Matt said, the reason he liked Zelda was not for the dungeons. The reason I like Zelda, specifically Ocarina of Time, is because I have a weird thing for theming dungeons and then using a slow progression of items. Like, oh, I get the slingshot here. That means I'm going to use it on this next thing. That's why I like Zelda. And so when I started Zelda, and after like the first 5 hours, or Breath of the Wild, and it was like, here's the 6 move things you're going to be able to do. Here's your 6 abilities. Yeah. Just go out and have a good time. That almost betrayed what I liked about Zelda. And once I was able to get over that, I was able to enjoy the game from, like Matt said, a visual, kind of explore the world, look in nooks and crannies, climb that mountain, a more Skyrim perspective. But when it got to the things that I was looking forward to the most, like, the dungeons, they were always just like these big, hulking things that felt really hollow to me. And that's where I draw my negatives from, is the things that I was looking forward to the most fell flat the most. Like Matt said, most people complain about the dungeons, and that's what I was looking forward to. I like the shrine stuff. But on the flip side, Matt, you like the exploration, and that's what Breath of the Wild did in droves. Better than any open world game this year, it gave player agency in what they want to do in the world the forefront, and then kind of let the story of Zelda Breath of the Wild back up a bit. Whereas I like my Zelda to be like, you need to get these 8 medallions to save the princess and then fight the guy. Like, that's what I look for in Zelda, and that's why I fell off. But I can see it for its merits, for sure.
Yeah, and I can understand. I mean, it's all personal preference, and also I can see the flaws that are in that game. The weapon durability system is a little too harsh. Yes, it should have been toned down quite a bit more. For me, I think people complaining about weapon durability, they're bitching a little bit too much. But I agree with you that especially early game, you find yourself looking for a lot of random weapons, and it becomes more of a nuisance than anything else. Well, and also, you'll have a stick that breaks 3 times, and you're like, come on. Like that part I didn't mind because that felt more like the survival aspect. For me, it was when you find something you like and you don't want to use it. Exactly. You're holding your rocket launcher and using your pistol because you want to wait for the big boss. But then when you get to the big boss, it's a big empty thing that's not fun. Oh, and the ending was pretty anticlimactic as well. Yeah, that's the thing. I think the approach, the lead up in the whole game, the approach to it, very good. Infiltrating the castle, especially because my experience infiltrating the castle was a lot different than some of the other people that I spoke to about it. I basically used stealth and cheesed past a lot of them, but the final boss was much too easy. I think the reason that Breath of the Wild tops this list is your favorite and many other people's favorites. And I think now is a good time to also say that this is a 90skid.com's official Game of the Year 2017 pick. It is Zelda Breath of the Wild. I think the reason it sits so high up is because Zelda Breath of the Wild is one of the only games I can think of where I went to my brother who was playing it, and also went to my co-hosts of my podcast and other people who were playing it on their Switch, and went, hey, did you get to this part yet? Or did you find this thing? And they went, no, but I found this thing on this side of the map. And I was like, I haven't even gone over there yet. And for the first time in a long time, it felt like even though we're all playing the same game, it's not procedurally generated, people are finding things. They're having that feeling of discovery that you don't really get much anymore. No. Oftentimes you just get, oh, you discovered this place. And you're like, cool, it's a place I can go to on my map. When Zelda was like, hey, look at this cool creek, even if it's not named, I was like, wow, this is cool. And then you find a shrine, like Matt said. And it's more of a journey. I think when Shigeru Miyamoto
originally through it was Miyamoto who had the childhood with going into the caves and stuff, right? Or was that
into the forest.
Okay, that's what Zelda's based around, and I think that's what Breath of the Wild does the most. It evokes those kinds of feelings. And I think that's why people, because it is childlike in nature, you can get lost, and just the discovery of being out in this big bad world and finding things you never thought you were going to be able to find in a Zelda game. Yeah, I see the draw for that for sure. My big issues with it just come with the things I've already named. You know, I go into Zelda expecting something different, but I would be really stupid to not include Zelda on my top 10 because of a begrudging, like, I like the dungeons. Like, it's a damn fine game. I just think Mario's a little bit more polished, but
Sure,
Zelda is a damn fine game.
It is. I love the visuals of it.
What's your favorite? What is your favorite dungeon though? Because I found that I didn't really remember the dungeons as much as I remember the powers
in
you
the
got
game?
after them. Yeah.
Oh, they're all the same, really.
That's my issue. Is like
Yeah,
that's why
the dungeons are pretty weak.
Or Link to the Past is like I'm going into the fire temple with its own theme, and I'm going into the water temple, and yeah, that's tropey. That's video games in general. But maybe Zelda is the one franchise that did the theming with the elemental stuff the best. You know,
I like in terms of the approaching the beasts, the divine beasts. I found reaching them, the journey towards them was a lot better than the destination.
100%.
And maybe boarding them was interesting, but once you got inside, I was like, oh, this is it. For people that were expecting, okay, like if you were a classic Zelda fan and you love temples and dungeons and you're rubbing your hands like,
room-based.
here we go.
Yeah.
All right. And if you got in there, you're probably going to be disappointed. I was like,
It felt more Rubik's Cube than anything else to me.
Yeah, I like it. I don't really like a lot of challenging mind puzzles. Maybe I'm just dumb. Maybe that's not how it, like, I'm not a person who likes a Rubik's Cube. That's tough. Yes. I'm not going to play The Witness. It was just fine. You know, like
I think you should play The Witness. Because you don't like puzzle games.
Oh, okay. But like in terms of, you know, I had fun with Ocarina's dungeons, the Fire Temple. I remember banging my head against for all the Water Temple. You know, those are pretty good memories because you stick with them for so long that when they finally click, you know, you feel like, oh my God, I lived in this temple for so long. But yes. I was happy with this one I wanted to explore. I wouldn't have wanted to be stuck in a dungeon for a few hours. I was happy to just go in, do a shrine. Oh, this is too hard. I'll pop out and I can come back later and try it again.
I think that Breath of the Wild was a necessary step for The Legend of Zelda to take to be able to function as we go into the future of games. It needed to be more open world and not as focused. Skyward Sword was fun, but it was eventually just not that great. I think that they did a good job. I think that the one that will win me over is the one where they marry the open world exploration, the discovery, with those very themed and focused dungeons. Because I think that's the side that I'm missing, you know. But that's just personal taste. Yeah, Zelda Breath of the Wild is a good time, man.
Yeah, it is. Wolfenstein, I got to get to that one as well. All right, so some of the people on our chat here that were mentioning their favorite games of the year. Corey likes to go through too many games. He can't pick one. He just likes to have a quick time with them and move on to the next. He also plays a lot of older games. Rossner's favorite game of the year was Mario Odyssey.
Nice pick.
And did I miss? Somebody had picked Horizon Zero Dawn.
It's a good time. I gave that a 9.5.
Chief Waka.
I gave that game a 9.5. Yeah, I mean it's a damn good game. It also has the unfortunate problem of the opposite of recency bias. I played that in January, or what was that, spring? Like March? It's been so long that I forget. I remember Lance Reddick was in it, and I remember being really interested in his character.
Right.
And I remember clips of that game, but I think some games are better than it just because I played them more recently. But judging from my own opinion when I wrote it, when I played the game, that game is a 9.5 out of 10. So yeah, the merits. But I think that's ultimately the reason that my list was the way my list was. You know, where my number 10 was, or 10 out of 10 was number 4 or whatever, is because I played 102 games. Mm-hmm. And for a game to speak to me or stand out in a narrative sense, especially when it's like going to the movies every week. Eventually, you're going to see that Hollywood is just retreading every single thing.
Yeah.
That's how video games can be, especially when you get to something like a first-person shooter. Most of the time, you're just shooting people. The dialogue is whatever. But Wolfenstein 2 made me stop. It made me think. think, and it made me care about the story more than the people I was shooting. You know, like I didn't care about the guns and stuff. I cared about what was going to happen to the characters. And I think that's why you chose Zelda, is because those moments of magic discovery have rarely ever happened for you and haven't happened in any other game. So those are the things that point out for us. It's not about being a complete package, because there's many games that I would say are infinitely replayable that came out this year, but that doesn't make them the best, you know?
Absolutely.
I think we have a solid list all across with indies, big AAA and stuff. We did a good job.
Smurf's fave was Uncharted. And
Lost Legacy.
Although Corey did not want to mention one game, he says the only 2017 game he played was Orcs Must Die Unchained. And if you've been on our Discord, him and Blaze have put some serious time into that. That's a free tower defense game, but from a first person or third person perspective, I do believe. Roster wants to know game of the year for the games we streamed. We actually answered us on the last show. I would say
we did Final Fantasy 13-2.
13-2. That's the one.
But that's well, we were only counting Final Fantasy games, old Final Fantasy games. I think besides that, I mean, you played Dragoon, you played Lost Odyssey,
Tales of Xillia,
Tales of
the 13
Xillia.
trilogy, Final Fantasy 10, 10-2. I streamed stuff like I streamed an episode of Super Mario Odyssey.
Super Mario Odyssey.
But when I streamed it, I was in the beginning, and it has a pretty weak beginning, I think.
It was a good game. It was a good game. It was a good year for games, so much so that I was writing up my top 10. There was many games I cut that could have won Game of the Year in 2015, you know, or 2014. You know what I'm saying? Like
what? Maybe name a couple.
You put me on the spot.
Okay, that's fine. That's not fair.
I had Yakuza Kiwami, even though it's a remake, or Yakuza 0. Geez.
But that's the thing with the games is that there are. I think in the end it kind of comes down to that personal preference of like what speaks to you, because they all have flaws. And is it something like you're saying about how it's like when people listen to music for a long time, you just can't listen to top 40 radio anymore just because it sounds too generic, not creative enough. And you end up liking the stuff that's a bit more extreme that's going to turn some people off, but is strong enough to speak to you. Prey is one I really wanted to give a chance to because I love Dishonored. I love that studio. I love what they were going for. It looked like an old school PC game. It looked like Half-Life in a way. It looked like it wanted you to think again.
Tacoma, we brought that up before. Tacoma was a great time. Metroid Samus Returns, South Park Fractured But Whole, The Evil Within 2, Call of Duty World War II was even decent this year. I thought it was meh, but in comparison to if it came out like 3 years ago, for sure. A lot of VR stuff too. Rec Room, Doom VFR, Accounting Plus, Shooty Fruity. A lot of VR stuff too. I'm just saying it was a crazy year for games across the board, not just for AAA, but for indie. Everyone brought their all. Mobile, there's some great mobile games this year. You know, like what a year. Wow, we talked a long time. How long was this one?
This is 2 hours, 27 minutes.
Jesus Christ.
All right, so real quick recap. Our best music from 10 to 1, Flint Hook, Mario Odyssey, Wolfenstein, Before the Storm, Night in the Woods, Zelda, Sonic, Persona 5, Cuphead, and our favorite music of the year was Nier. Well, that one was a deliberation where we had to come to a consensus.
All those top three were really good.
Yes, and I could move Cuphead to the top there, but Nier just hit me personally more. My game of the year, Horizon Zero Dawn, Fire Pro, What Remains of Edith Finch, Uncharted, Lost Legacy, Sonic Mania were my honorable mentions. My real top 5, Siege Ship, Stories Untold, Cuphead, Mario Odyssey, and Zelda. Yours, Thimbleweed Park, Resident Evil 7, Skyrim VR, Destiny 2, Injustice 2, Zelda Breath of the Wild, Edith Finch, Mario Odyssey, Cuphead, and Matt Owen's top game of 2017 was Wolfenstein 2, The New Colossus.
Brian Bloom, man. Brian Bloom. He does the voice of BJ Blazkowicz. I don't know, man.
You got to have a strong lead character. Rutger Hauer's awful performance in Observer has really thrown me off. Geralt really throws me off when I try to play The Witcher 3.
Really? I love Geralt of Rivia. But that's the thing is Brian Bloom.
Oh, yeah, you do.
That's what Brian Bloom does. Brian Bloom as BJ is just a lot of like is this my time? I've fought these Nazis for years, and I don't know if I can see the green on the other side of the pasture. Oh,
I don't mind her
Caroline.
raspy voice. I just find with Geralt, he's
that's-
so one note and he
But
sounds
that's what
so flat.
Brian Bloom is. Like Brian Bloom is just that like introspective, like the Nazis have taken everything, but can they take the soul of America? Like that is like Wolfenstein to a T. And I could see people getting like a little over that, but boy, did it speak to me. Boy, did it. GTT, Game Think Talk, our number 10 best games of the years. We did a good one today, Matt. You should be proud of the thing you made.
Yes, that was a lot of fun. Thanks everybody for joining us.
Yeah.
Corey, Smurf, Rossner, Ted.
I want to say something real quick before we leave. It's just more of a plug. I don't know if you guys like speed runs or anything, but Awesome Games Done Quick is a week-long marathon of speed runs. If you go on Twitch tomorrow, Sunday Eastern, if you guys are in the U.S., it's just 7 days straight of people beating all sorts of games really, really fast, all in the name of charity. It's the Prevent Cancer Foundation. We covered the summer event, which is called Summer Games Done Quick, in July. We're covering Awesome Games Done Quick throughout the week. If you just go to 90skid.com, you'll see that stuff all over the place. We're just going to watch speedruns. But yeah, if you guys like speedruns, go to gamesdonequick.com/schedule and you can look over, because it's not like 7 days. It's like it starts at noon on Sunday, and then they're going to be playing games for however many 120 or however many hours until the next Sunday. It goes through all night. It never ends. They never take the stream down. So there's lots of stuff to watch. There's a lot of stuff.
Here you go, Mattio. Smurf says, Smurf loves Matt with 2 T's. He gave really good insights. Corey's planning on watching Games Done Quick. Smurf did ask if could Matt tie his hair up, but that's up to you. Oh, look, he's doing it. Corey didn't think he would. There it is. That's what it looks like there. I think it looks better when you're a caveman. Don't go that. Don't do that. That looks much better. All right, we're out of here. We're going to leave you with Nier Automata's Wretched Weaponry dynamic vocal winner of our best music. Goodbye, everybody. Thank you so much for joining us.
Watch AGDQ. I love you guys. Bye.
Bye.